the meeting to order. Are we doing pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll get our first vote, White Brenner, with,
we have consent?
Douglas White and Julia Gold.
Corrections, please.
We do have comments from the audience.
Comments on the audience?
None in the audience. I told him he could blame the driver. That was me.
You get a correction.
Part of the way, so yes.
You look at the cabin.
And yes, these are heavy chairs. I'm not doubling up, they are. Heavier spot. Then I can't, hey, you know what, I just pulled out a... Right? We've got water up there and hand sanitizer if you like. And we are going to start the interview with Paul. He's going to read our first 4 questions. And then we'll move over here to me and I'll answer all our questions.
Sure. And just to give you a little information on how the day is going, so the board is interviewing 3 different firms. And they may or may not actually make their selection today. If not today, I'm sure they'll do it at the next board meeting, which is the 6th of July. Yeah. And then effective date of any contract, obviously, that needs to be negotiated between the firm and the board. Yeah.
That's great.
And yeah, to keep my title to you.
I didn't know enough to
So now, we'll have to go into the board and concentrate on your answers, and take some notes. So I'll go ahead and start the first 4. Describe what you perceive as key issues to be addressed by South Tahoe Public Utility District's General Counsel. For example, what constitutes 80% of the work? And describe your experience in addressing this work.
So, I think until you get into a situation, it's hard to say exactly what's going to constitute the vast majority of work. So based on, you guys have your recycling program that's going on right now. So it may be because of, kind of the infrastructure and where you're at with that compromises a little bit more of the time. Generally speaking, for general counsel, most of it's, agenda review, working on HR issues and just kind of answering kind of like generalized questions as you go through, like whether it's contracts. So it's kind of, that tends to be kind of like the day-to-day work. And so, again, whether or not that constitutes 80%, I think always kind of varies from government agency to government agency. And it also varies when you have big projects going on, other things going on. So for instance, you guys are going through replacing some of your sewer lines. So, if you have some failures there, then going in and kind of fixing those, if you get a construction defect, that's going to take a little bit more time. So again, I think it varies, but generally speaking, the bread and butter is going to be your agenda review, your HR issues, and your contract reviews. So, and then we kind of go from there.
And what kind of experience do you have in that?
Pretty expensive at this point. I'd like to say I was young for my age, and so it's misleading, but, I've done this for over 20 years. The main emphasis of, I started off as, just a pure land use attorney, in the Bay Area, working for, Hogue Fitman, and then I went to Greenberg Track and was at the Palo Alto office, and then went down to Santa Monica. So, all of those things, including kind of, Santa Monica had a whole coastal, component to it, which is, similar to some of the stuff that comes into the lake, but in terms of environmental sensitivities. But, it's always for me been about infrastructure, and how that fits into the puzzle. So that evolved, and then I wound up becoming, general counsel for a bunch of different cities and special districts over time. And then, most of my niche has been carved out in, again, infrastructure financing, rate impositions, fighting against Howard Jarvis, if need be, and kind of just navigating kind of the infrastructure financing component of it, and just how you all make it, how you make it work. So that's the role. Maybe, which I'll maybe let her go in a little bit more. She'll take on a little bit more of like the litigation role, and again, 218 processes, if and when those are needed. And then Barbara Brenner comes in with some of the water quality stuff at our office, so she's a water attorney, doing it up and down the state. So when those needs are there, we have people who go in and do it. And then in litigation, Angela Shrev de Laverne usually handles that for us, and she does it at a really high level. And these are all people who have come from, with the exception of Newbie who came up underneath me. These are all people who worked at basically M50 firms. That decided to kind of get together and operate, so we have a little bit more control over our lives and rates and the type of work that we could do. So I'll let you go into a little bit more about that here.
So thank you all for bringing us in today. And to give a little bit more context of the type of work that we typically do, especially my practice, is either city attorney, general counsel work. So for a special district, I represent a community service district down on the coast that basically does very similar, provides similar services to water and sewer. So we're very familiar with that process, working on as Doug mentioned, 218. Helping oversee these litigation issues. We do have that crossover potentially with the HR component, and so Deborah Henshaw-Viera is one of the other attorneys of the firm, senior attorney who oversees all things related to HR, which is generally one of those other big areas that you don't necessarily see any kind of creeps in, but it's pretty key to working on a day-to-day basis with our government agency clients, because it's those types of things that pop up, especially when you have a significant amount of a workforce. So those things are going to come up in labor negotiations, reviewing employment contracts, and things of that nature. So there's a little bit of everything in the type of work that we do for our government agencies, and fully anticipate that we'd be able to provide that level of service for the district.
Yeah. It's everything. It's from like a lot of recharge projects going on for now, upgrading to treatment plants, just to, pretty much all the components of it. So every jurisdiction is different and have different challenges, but it's all components that we dealt with on a regular basis, and it's just what the needs of the district is at the time. So,
all right, great. Describe your perspective of the general counsel's role in representing the district and working with the board.
So, okay. So probably, because I forgot to do it, do just a little bit of introduction of myself. I think I talked a little bit about my practice area, but my name kind of gave it away, but probably I was one of the founding partners of, White Printer. And again, started in the Bay Area practicing after spending a decade in the legislature, and working there. For the last over 20 years now, this is effectively, what I've done. And while I started off kind of more on the private side, I wound up gravitating to the public side because I felt that it was something that we have to offer, I had to offer, and it made me feel a lot more better about myself. Nothing against the private side, I loved it, still do a little bit of private work, but it's where I find the most personal satisfaction, kind of taking communities and helping them kind of do better, right? And being a part of that. I think the important thing is I have a very specific role as general counsel in what I'm supposed to do, which is to provide the ability of the board to make educated decisions and give them as many options as possible. So when they're making those decisions, it may not be the one that I have from a legal perspective recommended, may not be the one you as general manager or whoever the general manager recommends. But it's our job then to execute it to the best of our ability. But always the decision is made educated and from a standpoint of the pros and the cons. Again, I see the general manager's role doing that on some of the policy side, and I see the attorneys and general counsel's job to do that from the legal pros and cons. And so I think kind of like the overused term trusted advisor, I think, is a key component, but it's not my job to tell you what to do. It's my job to give you creative options, pros and cons, and let you make educated decisions. So that's the first and foremost. I think the second component to it is at least, and this is my perspective, is to be integrated, right? Like, I think that we should be under no illusion that the general counsel is on the same level as the general manager who's here on an everyday basis. The general manager is and should have a much better feel for what's going on a day-to-day basis, and so we're going to be relying on them, and we're going to be relying on the board president in particular, as whoever's been serving in that role is going to be our main contact on the board. We're going to keep in contact with all of you, but we're going to make sure we don't violate the Brown Act, create any serial meetings, and so our main point of contact is going to be, generally speaking, the board president. So we're going to, use those avenues to make sure that we know the issues that are before you and that are important, and again, we stay in that kind of trusted advisor role, and we kind of keep it, all separated. But we're not trying to be a member of the board. And I think something that gets overlooked a lot, it's also our job to be a good steward of the budget and make sure that, the use of legal counsel is when it's needed. It's not just there because it's there. A lot of people will just show up to meetings just because. And so, like, if you have a bunch of proclamations on your meetings, we'll be here if you want us to be, but that may not be, a good use of your resources. So again, I think the biggest thing is to be able to, I look at us as professionals, and for that means that we paint with a creative brush, and we're not just scriveners, but we're also, want to be good fiduciaries of the district's money. So we're not going to create things just to create things, but we're going to make sure that every decision that you make, and when we're here, we're going to be proactive, integrated, and involved, while being good stewards, and just give you the tools that you need to make a decision.
No, I think that covers the bulk of it, and we've found that we've been really successful in integrating ourselves with staff, despite the fact that we're contract. So we're another vendor, similar to the other vendors in the district have, but we have found that I think the way that we've reached out, maintain that level of communication with the actual clients of the board members, and key staff, depending on who you would assign, to have that contact with our office is very important. And we may not be here on a day-to-day basis, but our presence is up, and it's felt through the constant communication. We're very accessible. I would say that is something key to making sure that the client understands that we're at your disposal whenever you need us, even though we're not here. We're not around the corner, but we're just a call away, we're an email away. We've integrated several technology aspects to make sure that we're on top of stuff. It's been really successful, and so far the clients are very happy with that.
And the last thing I'd probably say is it doesn't matter if you're in the majority or if you're in the minority, we treat you the same, right? So it's our job to execute whatever the majority of the board dictates. But that being said, I mean, you get the same treatment, get the same access and everything regardless if you're in the majority or the minority on a particular issue. Sometimes those span several different issues, but it's you each elected or elected and have the opportunity to serve and deserve that kind of access and information.
Great. How would you go about managing or overseeing specific legal assignments that the district outsources to other firms, such as litigation, to ensure that the best interests of the district and the board are being represented cost-effectively, efficiently, and genuinely?
Yeah. So number one, even though we offer a lot of the services, I want to make it clear, we don't believe in disrupting relationships that are working. So, for instance, if you have relationships with people who do HR and labor, then I think you guys used Delfino, at least in the past, that if it's working, then we have no interest in interrupting it. This isn't about, like, trying to do everything just because, absorb everything because you can. You have good relationships, keep those good relationships, but know that there's somebody to help you if you can. And I think the same thing goes if it, on litigation. I know you have some litigation you got to talk about later today, but if you have outside counsel, we're not here to say, hey, we need to come in and take over that. That's not our approach. That being said, it's good to know that those capabilities exist if it's ever needed or if you feel like the board or staff need a second opinion. So that's first and foremost. I think the second component to it is I think it's our job to review their billing, right, and to make sure that billing is kind of appropriate and that you aren't getting gouged. I think the bigger experience is when you're using people kind of on one-offs, or if you have kind of insurance claims, even though you're not really paying for the billable hours, only if you're doing it indirectly through your insurance claims, insurance premiums. You want to make sure that you're just getting what you pay for and that you're getting the best possible representation. So I do believe it's our job to review the billing. I think it's our job to advise the general manager on whether or not those billings are appropriate or if there's conversations that need to be had. And I think it's our job to understand them, at least at a high level, again, not to create more work, but at least at a high level, the philosophy of what's being executed to make sure that there's not any concerns. Because I think one thing I didn't mention when we were talking about role of the general counsel is I think just one of the things that's built in is, we are your built-in risk management. Kind of like your conscience of like, okay, where's their risk and how should it be? I think the same thing goes when you have relationships and people are litigating on your behalf or handling HR on your behalf. We would want to be informed, at least at a high level, because if there's any concerns, we would make sure that those concerns were brought to their attention. Again, I'm going to keep coming back to this communication and education with the board and the general manager and staff being probably, I think, the biggest issues. First and foremost, to kind of keep you guys abreast of what's going on. And we can't do the best job because special counsel will often come in a vacuum, right? Whereas the idea of general counsel is we have an idea of what's going on in total, and so only when that happens can you kind of like, we might know something that they don't that might help in a defense, or to create greater risk. So again, that's why I just think macro level communication, education, integration, those would be what I would say.
All right. Okay. Describe your experience with agency consolidations or incorporations.
Decent amount. depends on what you mean by incorporations, but that's a trickier legal word. But consolidations, I mean, we've done mostly on the fire district side, right? So that's been done. We've done it, and I will say this, and this is maybe some of what you mean with incorporation, but we've done it through just certain services like fire, as an example, or we've done it through certain services like police, or one jurisdiction will do it to the other. We've done it on wastewater treatment for recycled water. That's going on in Stanislaus right now, through Patterson and Modesto, kind of taking, some of the load after that, because you can't get you practical, but some of how you guys would use it. So we've done, those kinds of things. We've done other ones where you're talking more about staffing of special districts by cities, or we've done it in reverse where special districts have taken on certain responsibilities, either from the county, like taking on additional responsibilities, like park responsibilities and things. So the answer is that we've done it, we've gone through those processes. If I was to nail down the two, we've probably done a lot more consolidation and incorporation, so there's not as many incorporation opportunities, out there. We have worked on the edges. Well, we've been special counsel in LAFCO, like on the Mountain House project that's just outside of Tracy and there. So we've done, I'm very familiar with LAFCO, again, special counsel. We've been taking several projects through LAFCO. So there's that kind of component. And then, we loosely advise Jamestown, just outside of Sonora, looking at going through kind of incorporation there. In Tuolumne County, because Sonora is the only incorporated city right now. So, and then, we deal with those issues in places like Angels Camp, because both in Calaveras and Tuolumne, we represent both Sonora and Angels Camp, and those are the only two cities. And so, that's the question of, incorporation kind of comes up a lot. And we've also done a lot of those the fights for jurisdiction. So, we've been on the side of it, usually it's fire districts serving cities when they look to expand. But we've also been part of other districts who have utility service areas that are water rights. And that's usually that's been more in the San Luis Obispo area that we've done that, where they sought to expand and then use service territory. So I think we've been on both sides of that. So
we also represent a district that's looking for consolidation, but they're the ones that are looking for the help, and their neighbors is the agency that's a little uneasy about that and what that would mean for their constituents in their district. So we've been on that side too, of examining ways to, I think, better service the district residents, whether it's working with the county or working with a neighboring CSP. So those are tricky areas and subjects because there's very strong feelings from the residents, and so we're very familiar with those kinds of situations as well.
Okay. I mean, the most complicated one I could give you an example of. I mean, and again, it's relevant only in it shows expertise, maybe not all that's directly relevant here. But it's the Diablo Grande project that's outside of Patterson, and it's been a huge, failure. Looking at the very wealthy billionaire Mexican family come in, build, get something entitled, and then kind of bail. It's gone through 2 bankruptcies. But in that case, the city of Patterson, who we represent, we had a contract to serve sewer, and then they have a defunct CSD through which the contract was entered to, and you have Western Hills, you have the Bakersfield Water Company, and that's the same problem with water. So those are the more complicated things that you kind of work through, and I think in that respect we're kind of uniquely situated. So I would just say that our experience spans several different areas, whether it's the LAFCO area, the city side, the special district side, but utilities. You kind of seen and done it all, out-of-boundary agreements, external staffing, internal staffing. So, thank you.
Okay. Describe the firm's experience in dealing with mediation, fact-finding, and arbitration.
you want to answer this one?
We've handled in several contexts, so if it's via contract, because you have provisions in certain contracts that require either a request for mediation and then arbitration, but mostly in the HR arena is the area that we've dealt with most. So we've done both, and typically, you know, if it's the other thing that we haven't mentioned too much is working with outside counsel through risk management. So I don't know how much of that links into this, but that's something that we have a lot of experience in as well, coordinating with them. So it really just depends on the specifics of the matter and the district, but the mediation arbitration component is essentially a precursor. Mediation is a precursor to formal litigation. The arbitration is in lieu of a case you would typically file in the Superior Court, and so that's something that we're very well versed in, and something that we do for all the clients.
I think other than HR, it's mostly in the construction arena, like you get the faulty, you know, asphalt paving project that comes in, or sometimes we'll have developers that will come in and put in like high sewer piping. All of a sudden it starts, cracking, or we think that it's not going to be maintained, it wasn't put in, compaction issues on roads. So, all of those things, easement issues. So we've done it on all those. I mean, we were just in mediation like 2-3 weeks ago on a sidewalk case for one of our cities. So, again, I think that other than HR, probably our main one's been in the construction kind of context. I mean, in litigation, it always depends because you have to position yourself. So when we got to a situation in the city of Dixon where we were getting fined for our wastewater treatment plant not being in compliance, and it had gone through some rate changes and it had been failed and then pulled back, we found creative ways to be able to kind of protect ourselves and do it through litigation and do it in a way that you can make the mistake that Fresno did, which is when they won the case. Yeah, they won, but because they lost on one little thing, they wound up paying $3 million in attorney fees. In that instance, and nobody's regoing, it meant that we had to sue our own city clerk to make them have to come in, in a special way. And that was against Howard Jarvis, and we won that case. But I think that, in litigation, it really depends on the position that you want to do and how to creatively position yourself in the best light, taking into context attorney's fees, which often far eclipse, what the actual monetary damage would be. So, and it's also part of it is just advising you guys on what makes sense, right? Like, okay, you're going to spend this amount of money. It's my job to give you an idea of what litigation is going to cost. And you making a decision whether or not the amount of money that you're going to go over is worth it. Sometimes you'll do it just on principle because you don't want to be somebody who lets people off with faulty work. Sometimes you need to do it to trigger bonds, on construction cases. So each setting is different. We've been in, and there's nothing that you guys would come across that would make us concerned or go into.
And one big one right now is the wastewater treatment plant arbitration.
Yeah.
That was a combination of it was a design defect, and so it's pretty involved. So that's probably the bigger one that we're working on right now.
It was the first time we did a wet install on a treatment plant. It didn't increase the oxidation level high enough, and so it didn't. Basically, it wound up increasing the amount of. We lost a lot of the capacity of the plant because of it, and so because of that, we got into a major lawsuit on a performance issue, stuff like that. So. But we feel good about it, other than the fact that we have to be in litigation to do it. So we've done power purchase agreements. One of the interesting things is going to be for you. You'll have a little interstate kind of like purchasing that has the possibility of going on. So there's some nuances there. But yeah. So everything that you guys will come across, because that's a really, really long way of saying there's nothing that you guys would come across that we wouldn't feel comfortable with.
Okay. Although the district currently has separate representation for labor issues, please describe your experience in employment law, including progressive discipline, terminations, claims, negotiations, mediation, and lawsuits.
Yeah, so I think in the interest of time, I'll go a little bit shorter on this one, but Deborah Henshaw here, as Nubia said, kind of heads that up. She was the first female partner for Whitler in Sacramento. She's been with us for quite a long time. There's other people in that department, like 3 people who work in our labor and employment department. And she's done all of it, and she does it on a day-to-day basis with jurisdictions just like you, including special districts that do nothing but want us to. So we can. Our experience is pretty extensive and vast, and we feel very confident in those buildings. But again, I want to rephrase it. We've always had the best results, not disrupting any kind of relationship. So it's just a tool.
And the good thing about that is some of the day-to-day work will be done by other attorneys at the firm, but our role and the way that we see our best service to the district is that we're still the point of contact for the client. So it would be for the board if there's questions, issues, and we're part of that presentation in closed session with item. So we're still very heavily involved. It just may mean that there will be other attorneys headed up by Deborah's department doing some of the day-to-day, but that, I mean, it's all hands on deck, because there's plenty of times I get calls about, we need to put somebody on a PIP right now, we need advice right now, so that's very common.
So, and I think that this is one to take one more second to talk about a little bit of the philosophy of the firm. So one of the things that's going to differentiate us from the other stuff that you're kind of looking at is the fact that we kind of control our own destiny. So, and again, Deb came from Whitler, I came from Greenberg, Randy came from Greenberg, Barbara came from Stoll, Nubia, for better or worse, came up underneath me. All of our attorneys have kind of functioned at a fairly, kind of high level in terms of both the clients that we've worked on and the stuff that we've worked on. But we purposely kept our firm 25 or less to be able to have control and be able to operate kind of in a cost-effective way, because when you go above 25, it gets really expensive really quick. So the long story short is, when you deal with me, I have complete autonomy to make any decisions, whether it's on billing or or whatever it is that you need. There's nobody else I have to go to, and that was part of the reason we have set up the firm that we did. And my philosophy, for instance, like on billing, is if you disagree with something, just don't pay it. Just let me know so I can get my accounting correct. And if that happens too often, then we wind up sitting down and having a conversation about, well, maybe this doesn't make sense for us. From a financial perspective, if we're doing work that you guys don't want to pay for. So, anyway, I just want to kind of use that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about our philosophy. And again, that separates us because everybody in the firm is going to know who we are, right? You don't get handed off to a bunch of people. You kind of become part of we become part of your family, and you become part of ours.
Okay. What is your legal experience related to government finance, including debt financing and legal review of contract documents?
So pretty simple. So that's me specifically. So and I do it all the time. I mean, I am constantly involved in infrastructure. We're using a lot of CFDs. Lately for financing. We tried to get into refinancing when we could. We just finished up 2 or 3 refinancings recently that couldn't get done when the interest rates were a little bit, better. They're still decent for public entities, but they're not as good as they were 2 years ago. So it's not just that. And then we usually, we'll work with an entire, team and usually work with a financial advisor, in terms of being able to put that together. And those are pretty long-standing relationships. Obviously, Each jurisdiction has their own kind of like teams that they've put together and preferences. But from the legal perspective and managing the district's interests, we've been very involved in that. And it's not just, it's making sure it's the right time, it's making sure it's the right rate, it's making sure that it's positioned the correct way. It's making sure that you guys are informed about, the pros and cons and what the trade-offs would be. So, what can be financed through a district, what can't be financed through the district, making sure that there's maximum flexibility, and making sure kind of like the proper vehicles are being used. But it's also making sure on the finance side, like making sure your guys' job's not too difficult. We're not setting it up in such a way that requires a bunch of extra staff too, because that ongoing time, even though you can charge an administrative fee, can be significant. So I'm involved regularly.
We did call in early to help review a lot of the SRS financing documents for clients too. So there's not necessarily a lot of wiggle room there, but we're well versed on that one too.
Yeah, and this is not directly relevant, but even when we were using part of the money, making sure that we could find creative ways to maximize that and use that. So, yeah. It's all kind of related because there's more than one way to finance something. So.
All right. Our last question. Please provide us with a closing statement on why your firm should be chosen to be our next general counsel.
I think there's a lot. I think that we bring a unique set of expertise to the district and familiarity and control that you're not going to get in most places. And when I say that, it's because, again, maybe I preempted myself a little bit when I kind of talked about it earlier. It's that you're working with people who actually own the company, who are vested in the company, who aren't going to go to other places, and who have now worked together, in excess of a decade. Because that's when the firm was launched.
Yep, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Almost 11 years now. And we have, incredible consistency in that. And most of our clients become lifetime clients. So, for instance, now these were brought over by other councils, but, Riverbank, Oakdale, those communities, Newman, that had been in service by the attorney who's there for 30 years. Dixon, you're talking about 10 plus, Patterson 10 plus. So most of the places that we go in, we stay, and part of our value becomes in staying, building up that historic knowledge. And so, and we do that because we take a real interest in the district and kind of, and we take a long-term perspective because, there's not like some kind of external billable hour requirement that I need to hit by virtue of coming here. And we're also going to always make sure that you get the best, even if that means that we have to go outside the firm. So, for instance, in Riverbank, when we went out to site the firm, it was a very complex construction defect. We felt like, the Deepak Rock-Elkin firm was a better construction defect than we could offer, and you go and do that. So it's always figuring out what the best for you guys will be, and then making that recommendation to you. I think philosophically, we're going to be really different because we're a tight group, we're a small group, there's no satellite office. And so, that means that everybody's going to know who you are, and it's going to be really integrated, and they're going to have kind of like I said, that kind of consistency. The other thing is, because we're based in Sacramento, we have a lobbying practice that kind of goes along with this, and most of us have all come out of the state legislature. We're more in tune about what's coming in down the road, and we're actually at a lot of these, agencies, kind of actively lobbying on behalf of other clients to know what's going to happen before it happens. And I think that that's one of the big ads that has many of our clients have been able to kind of find and take advantage of. So, and we bring all that in what I would call kind of a boutique-ish type firm with very high level capabilities, in a cost-controlled way. But we do all of that in a way to be able to kind of, again, kind of preserve that kind of, the relationship that you'd expect from a firm that has like 500 attorneys. So I think that's what makes us kind of different. We can help you on the regulatory side. We can help you on the litigation side. We can help you at the boardroom. We pass legislation or work to pass legislation for different districts and state funds. So we have more than one creative approach where I think a lot of attorneys, they look at you in the courtroom or, and kind of advising you in the boardroom, and that's it, so I think we have a multifaceted approach, and we have that experience. So I think that's kind of what separates us apart. And again, I think, just our bill structure and the way we do it. You don't like the bill? Tell us what you're not paying. We're not going to question you, and we just need to know what lines to deduct so that our accounting stays straight, and why you're doing it, so we know from a quality control perspective. And I've only had it happen like 3 or 4 times, and each time it's happened. But I think things know that maybe things are going to review the bills, so they usually don't go out unless we've reviewed them. So that's why it doesn't really happen that often. But you might have a younger associate who spends a little bit more time on something. You get something back, and we're like, oh, you didn't catch it. You're right. So we're going to make it what we think it should be instead of what it actually was. So.
A couple things to add to that. I think one of the important things that makes us stand apart is this is the team. So we have a full variety of attorneys back at the office that will handle a lot of the day-to-day, but this is the team that we're presenting to you for your counsel. So it would be Doug and me as the deputy. And as I mentioned before, what's really key for us is integration. So we need to know that you trust us, that we trust you, and there's this mutual consideration of working together. So this is the team. The goal is never, and the plan never is to, you meet us, you like us, but then you never see us again, you never hear from us again because you're working with someone else at the office. That's not going to happen. And to Doug's point, that's why the firm was formed under that philosophy of we take on the clients that we want, we do the type of work that we like, because we don't just walk away from it. So we become almost an extension of your staff, and we become part of the White Runner family. The other thing to note, the approach that we have is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. We don't just come in and say, well, you have to conform to the way that we represent our clients or other districts or other cities or situations. So one of the things that we like to do initially when we are brought on board is to do what we'll call a legal audit. And that's actually pretty unique because it's something that we've worked on now for several years. It's very much to all of our clients' advantage. So what the legal audit is, it's something that we do free of charge. And when we come in, we sit down with key staff. We review major of the key documents, so the big plan, looking at some of your template contracts, agendas, packets, templates, etc., whatever it is that you would like us to look at, vendor contracts, employment contracts, etc., to give you an idea of what we see as things that, and prioritize, things that may need attention immediately, maybe mid-range, and then the long-term deferred maintenance, we can wait on that later because a lot of this depends on the budget and priorities, and strategic planning is part of the board's vision to carry out. So that's something that we do early on. As I mentioned, it's something that we do free of charge. But it gives us a good opportunity to get to know your staff and get to know the way that the district does its business so that we know how to best advise you. So it actually is to our benefit as well to do that. But again, I think the bigger point is we don't do things just to do them, and we will not just advise you. We don't take a backseat approach. We're very proactive. We take creative approaches when we need to, like Doug mentioned in one case where we had to end up suing our city clerk. But that's because this is the kind of work that we like to do, and I think that's reflected in how we represent our clients.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly, I think something that really sets us apart because we'll give you a whole list. Not to generate workers, you guys decide whether or not you want to do it. But at least you know structurally where the defects might be, so again, because I keep harping on this, it all comes back to education. You can only do stuff that you know. You can't do stuff that you're not aware of. And we do the audit because we don't want to be here for 2 years and be like, well, I probably needed to do that. So there's a purpose for us as well. So.
Okay, well, we are right on time.
Okay.
Is there any follow-up questions from the board?
No. Just quick. This is attached to number 6. This goes to maybe, just clarify on these items, have you dealt with unions and?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say, 90% of our clients who actually have, staff, because we have some that are completely contract, that's a whole another problematic universe. 90% of our public clients, maybe even higher than that, have, bargaining groups. So that's something that we're very familiar with, and in terms of working with their reps and being part of the, labor negotiations. So, yes.
Yeah, one of most of the labor negotiators in the area.
It's a small universe, and that's the other thing is we work really well, whether it's on the other side of the table or special counsel. The universe of attorneys that do this type of work is not very big. So you will inevitably run into attorneys that you know, and it's very important to keep that in mind. The reputation is everything. So that's something we pride ourselves on. Is that we work really well with other counsel, understanding that everybody has their own role to play, and we're at the discretion of the board.
Yeah. So, and we can craft it. If we want to get chosen, you can craft the arrangement however that works for you. So there's no one size fits all. We're open to kind of all the different options that are available to you. What retainers don't want to, you know, whatever makes the most sense for you. Again, our approach has always been a long-term approach.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, good luck to you all today. Well, maybe one last thing. What you got?
I
So next we have BB&K.
You're gonna have to skip to number 6 question.
I'm gonna say that on it.
Well, it's too much.
No, I didn't say that. To be honest, I thought.
Yeah.
There's a thing I don't want to be here. Without anybody asking, the keywords are given to me. Tailor-made, creative, proactive, do it for you, tailor to get. Yeah. Good.
All right.
Start. Yeah.
I like the fact that the firm doesn't have a lot of turnover, and they say that's the team. You know, you're pretty much feel like they're not going to put somebody off 6 months down the road. You're going to see in the face.
Yeah.
So, good option to start it out. You know.
She's done this years ago.
So BB&K is next.
Yep.
I can't find this. they even propose a retainer.
Well, the retainer, I guess.
Well, all of them have retainer plus, and then BBK does a structured straight line.
I know a little bit of second, I was conflicting why.
80% of it is like stuff. Red pants, too much use in them.
Yes, you did.
So they do an alternative fee arrangement.
Professional. Josh.
How are you?
I'm Nick.
Josh.
How you doing, Josh?
Great, Gloria. Thank you. Frank Gloria.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Kelly.
Hello again.
Good to see you again.
Have you, there's a daughter there, there's kids in the Bible, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. So the plan for today is, we have a few interview questions to go over. Melanie and I are going to take turns asking questions so that the board can just spend more time concentrating on your responses and taking notes and so forth. And it's possible the board may make a selection following the interviews today. If not today, the latest will be in our next board meeting, which is July 6th. So the latest the firms would be notified would be the following day, so July 7th. So it could be as early as tomorrow, but no later than July 7th.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and start off. Describe what you perceive as key issues to be addressed by South Tahoe Public Utility District's General Counsel. For example, what constitutes 80% of the work? And describe your experience in addressing this work.
Yeah, as I understand, General Counsel in the district, you're gonna have your, nuts and bolts suite of services. So obviously Brown Act, conflicts of interest, dealing with, public contracting issues, and then, even though it wouldn't necessarily, work on this in particular, all of the water sewer related issues. I understand that, there's going to be, you guys are looking at, rethinking or reimagining, whatever word you want to say, with your recycled wastewater program and various issues. So obviously, having a hand in that every time, and I think you guys just up to rate, but obviously Prop 218 is something that you want to make sure those notices are looked at, the cost and levels service studies are done appropriately, helping with all the contracts, staff relations, training. Those are going to be obviously your nuts and bolts from general counsel perspective. And also, obviously, as it relates to up here in the basin, it's important to have general counsel that understand the basin and understand some of the difficulties with peculiar to water and wastewater districts in the area. I don't know if anyone want to expand on that.
But no, the one thing I would add is, and Frank and I were actually just talking about this upstairs, is I think, one of the big parts of general counsel is just assisting in inter-board relationships and board staff relationships, and really kind of make sure everybody's sort of on the same page and rowing in the same direction. We were kind of joking, some of those things you learn in law school, right? And then you find yourself in your career, and that ends up being a pretty decent amount of work.
Yeah, we were interviewing law students at our firm virtually last week. And it was nice to be on the other side. And I remember being in their shoes 15 years or whatever it was ago. And I was telling them, as general counsel, and I probably made the numbers sound a little higher because I didn't want to totally freak them out. And I said it's about 50-50 legal or 50-50 relations and understanding the board, reading the room, understanding that. But it probably tips the scale closer to sometimes 30-70, And again, I didn't want to tell them that because I didn't want to imply that they're for a choice, money that they'll get in law school, may not. But, you know, yeah, so that's a big part of it.
Okay. Describe the perspective of the general counsel's role in representing the district and working with the board.
Yeah, I would say related to what we just had, I mean, this is a conversation that frankly, I understand board members need an opportunity to kind of share with something in confidence over difficult issues, and obviously your general counsel is a big white point for that. You also understand some of the political concerns or some of the major emerging issues that the district's facing, and frankly, it's a helpful way for board members to air those concerns or in a way that there's a level of confidence. You obviously have attorney-client privilege and things like that. And so often in those types of conversations, my approach is always to see, you know, how can we try to hear the stated concern and then the concern behind the concern and figure out the way we can help the board in context of the whole, of that board member in context of the whole board achieve their goals. Sometimes you have to remind the board member that may require a majority vote of the board itself, but you can give that board member options, ideas, so then they can bring them back and be the best policymakers that they can be. Yeah.
All right. How would you go about managing or overseeing specific legal assignments that the district outsources to other firms, such as litigation, to ensure that the best interests of the district and the board are being represented cost-effectively, efficiently, and genuinely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's your role as general counsel. Your role as general counsel is to almost, in a sense, serve as personal counsel to the district. I know it sounds weird, but really you're representing the district's perspective on all of their other contracts, including legal contracts and services, and making sure that those services are done. It's like an owner's representative on a construction project. I mean, that's the way I look at our jobs. We're the owner's representative that's helping. We understand the jargon, we understand the issues they're facing, we're asking questions. And at our firm, we have obviously a stable of, we have specialists of every kind. So we are used to managing them. We also work in environments where it's hybrid situations. We're general counsel, but we have large districts or large clients have their own departments, have their own lawyers, and we manage those. I personally, right now, that's what I'm doing for one of our irrigation district clients, large irrigation district clients. They have, every department has their own outside legal counsel. Everything goes through me to make sure cost of service is done. There's an actual proper management, that sometimes executive decisions are being made at the staff level that probably shouldn't be made at the staff level because they're quasi-legal, mostly legal decisions and strategy decisions that I have to be able to decide, is that a you decision or is that a board decision? And sometimes it is more of a board decision. And you need your general counsel to be in there to know that, identify that, and to bring it to the board appropriately. And like I said, we as a firm, we work in every kind of context where we're general counsel and you have outside services, including lawyers that are doing all the work. And we, you know, I believe that it's those, you know, that that doesn't matter if it's our firm or another firm. As general counsel, your job is to make sure that that service is coming across and the right decisions are being made. So.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add too is I think one of the concerns that sometimes folks will have in those situations is about cost. You know, is general counsel duplicating efforts or, you know, incurring costs just to oversee outside counsel? And I think, you know, one of the ways that, you know, we manage that is, you know, being CC'd on emails, right? So I don't know how many emails each day I'm CC'd on for the clients that I and their general counsel without actually billing for it. I mean, part of that's just the job of being general counsel to make sure you understand what's going on without point threeing every little thing. I mean, that's just not how we do business.
Right. That's a really good point, and that's a practice that I think we uniformly, you know, hold to. I just need to know if I get a call what's going on, and I also need to be able to know we need to rethink that or it's all one question. So, but yeah, we're not using that as a billable bonanza. So.
Okay.
Well, that's the worst thing ever used in this.
Would you describe your experience with agency consolidations or incorporation?
Well, we as a firm, do deal with that a lot. We're, general counsel for LAPCOs, so we're constantly dealing with, I think Josh, you're general counsel for LAPCO, so you can probably speak to that more, but as a firm, we have, LAPCO general counsel, and so, all throughout the state. So we have a ton of people in our firm that deal with agency merger, dissolution, all sorts of reformations, reorganizations, especially within among water districts as well. So that wouldn't be new to us as a firm.
Yeah, I can nerd out a little bit. So maybe I'll talk just briefly about kind of the way we structure our team and then kind of get into this question specifically. So, Frank's your general counsel, he's your kind of one-stop shop. I'm here as your assistant general counsel, so if he was, on vacation or sick, he would see me. But I would also be in the background assisting as necessary with any subject matter areas that might more closely fall in ours. I mean, I think, if you look at, us versus some of our competitors, our rates may be slightly higher, but we, give work to the subject matter expert, and that results in a lower overall cost to the client because they're spending less time to do this. So if there was a consolidation type issue, that's something that I work on. We would want to, take it all the way through, consider how we're going to structure it, right? So there's some ways you can structure those where LAPCO can't say no. They can just condition them, which makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker to move forward. Also, when you're thinking of a consolidation, it's a marriage. And like any marriage, it's sometimes pretty messy, right? So, the legal side of the consolidation is the easiest. The hardest part of the consolidation, everything else. Who's going to sit on the board? How's the board going to be structured? What's the culture of the agency? I've had consolidations almost fall apart over what the new district is going to be called. The most successful example I can give you, the one I'm most proud of in this area, is we helped two small CSDs in the town of Quincy, just about an hour or 2 hours north of you guys, consolidate. One represented East Quincy, familiar with the area, one represented more downtown central Quincy. The central Quincy district had the wastewater treatment plant, given, increasingly strict state regulatory requirements that we're all used to. They needed upgraded. They were looking at the time at $25 million project. That's a big number for a small town. But what they had some discussions with the state and regional board, and they let them know that they were going to be eligible for some additional funding if they considered consolidation. So they reached out to us, and we were able to bring them together under a new name. They didn't choose either, and new logos and all of that. Proud to say that they are consolidated 3 years now and just finishing up their new plan. So a lot of experience. I'm super not through.
Okay. Next question, describe the firm's experience in dealing with mediation, fact-finding, and arbitration.
A lot of experience. Our firm has the best and brightest public agency employment lawyers, and we work very close with them, even including in our Sacramento office. So we have a lot of cautionary tales, as well as some successes, but labor relations are always a challenge in every public agency, and so we're very familiar with it. It depends sometimes on the intangible aspects in our experience. Sometimes it's not just purely legal. Sometimes there are, sticks in the fire that can be provocateurs or exacerbating labor relations and help kind of create more room for grievances, or challenges over employment actions, that kind of thing. So yeah, our firm has a lot of experience. We do have employment folks that I know that have assisted districts here. So Yeah.
Okay. Although the district currently has separate representation for labor issues, please describe your experience in employment law, including progressive discipline, terminations, claims, negotiations, mediations, and law.
All in the employment context, I'm guessing?
Well, we have separate representation for labor issues.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, just
Okay.
some
Yeah.
sort of employment law, but.
Yeah, I mean, I cut my teeth as a litigator, so I'm general counsel that has litigation, experience. So especially when it comes to being general counsel, it's very helpful to understand when someone is talking about mediation, settlement, motion practice, trial, different strategic points. It's really helpful that general counsel, whether it's me or somebody else, that has that actual experience and background. And oftentimes, public agency law firms that are proposing general counsel do not have that background. So I like to be actively involved in the sense of knowing what's going on and helping the client understand the strategic choices that are being made, and not feel like the client doesn't feel like, or the board doesn't feel like those decisions are made for them, or really they're giving them just one option. My job is to say, listen, this is what they're recommending, but this is why they're not recommending that, and I can see, countering points to why you want to reconsider that. So again, between the general counsel service and obviously litigation services that our firm has, I think you would be well suited and well covered.
Okay. What is your legal experience related to government finance, including debt financing and legal review of contract documents?
Yes, our firm, we have public finance experts. I won't pretend to be a public finance expert. I haven't worked on any bond issues myself. Part of most of that's on purpose. I'm a lawyer, and I don't do well in math. But seriously though, our firm has regularly helped public agency on all public finance questions, issues, everything from bonding for infrastructure projects to creating ways to capitalize revenue for certain projects.
Yeah, so I mean, we have clients, I have a client right now that has a WIFIA loan. That's a pretty complicated one because they have a WIFIA loan, they also have a loan with the state board, and those sometimes the folks not top. Really important in those situations to make sure that you're actively engaged with the funding agencies. Sort of living in their office, to be honest with you. It's very easy for them to say no by email. It's a little bit harder to say no, when you're meeting with them regularly. My client that's been doing that, one tool that they've been using is hitting the Army Corps and the board up at Aqua every time they come to Aqua. And having regular meetings with them. I think this ranks point. Even if we're not hired as the bond counsel and we want to use separate bond counsel, we have our own public finance department. They review all of this for us on the general counsel side. And then I think on the last piece is just the funding revenue piece. And that gets to rates. And as Frank mentioned, we're very familiar with Prop 218, Prop 26, and all of those types of requirements.
I think I'll just kind of elaborate on those points because a lot of these questions get like particular, to the extent a lot of these questions get a particular subject, niches or certain areas of the law. In general counsel, it's so important that you have a firm, whoever that is, that has the general counsel counterpart to that, to make sure that they can call, just to be very blunt, yes on certain things, or at least question in a good way, why are we doing this? Because again, as general counsel, you are the owner's rep on a lot of these things. So we have the resources to bear if needed on all of the areas, and public financing just being a classic example of that.
Okay, last question. Please provide us with a closing statement on why your firm should be chosen to be our next general counsel.
Yeah, I hinted at it earlier, but I'll say it again, we know the basin. We have clients, utility agencies, districts in the area, in the basin. We know how hard it is to get water and wastewater utilities. The work and the operations that you do, how hard it is to do it in the basin. That's number one. And so we feel like it's just the logical next step for us. And we would be excited to serve the district in that way. I would also just say on the rates issue, it was brought up a little bit earlier, but there are firms that will have maybe a little bit lower rates. But again, the function of your legal spend every month is a function of rate and time. And I think here, the people that are the subject matter experts for each issue will be looking at it, working on it, and being done with it. There isn't going to be a ton of ramp up, and that also goes to our institutional knowledge, just what's going on in the base and serving out our clients. So I just think it's really important to emphasize that because we see that all the time in our practice. And is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think we would just elaborate a little bit on our experience in the basin. We're general counsel of the North Tahoe PUD. We're general counsel of the ADJOURNMENT, special counsel of Tahoe City PUD. We do work for Alpine Springs County Water District. Very familiar with the Tahoe Water Suppliers Association. Familiar with TROA. Kind of understand what it takes to do a water utility in the basin. I can't really frankly think of a harder place it is to operate a water sewer, especially a sewer system, than what you are. And we have that specialized expertise, both on the special counsel and general counsel side, that we believe really sets us apart from our competitors.
Any questions from the board?
Are either of you general counsel for any of those Tahoe?
I am. I'm general counsel for North Tahoe, PUD, and Alpine Springs.
KRCD as well.
Yeah, so I'm also general counsel for Tahoe RCD, so familiar with just the basin in general and a lot of the other projects that are going. I know one of the questions that can kind of lead to as well. If you're representing everybody, what about conflicts and that sort of thing? I think one of the reasons I love doing work in the basin, as you can probably tell from my client base, is it's a pretty collaborative place, right? It doesn't mean that everybody gets along all the time, but they generally get along most of the time, and I really enjoy it. I think one example of that, and maybe gets to why we'd be so excited for the opportunity, really exciting with some of the stuff that you guys are doing with your other partner agencies on some of the wildfire funding and water resource. I mean, I think the Caldor fire really was a shock to everybody, and I can only imagine what it was like for you guys as it was ongoing. But I think the lessons that were learned through that are things that folks on the North Shore are looking at, people in Quincy are looking at. It really was an example of how to operate a water utility to save the public health and safety and then just a catastrophe. So that was definitely pretty cool for us to have that opportunity.
Can you speak to your experience in negotiating power purchase agreements or otherwise maintaining those relationships?
So we have a group of folks who do energy, and so we're familiar with, historically we did a lot of PPAs on distributed generation, sort of renewable energy type stuff. I think that area has evolved. Now we do more traditional PPAs. We represent a number of community choice aggregators, so very familiar on that side of doing it. We also have done it on the customer side, both public with unions and then also with investor owns. One example we're doing is kind of a fun project. We represent Monterey One Water. They're doing a project with the local solid waste district it's kind of a digester, and it's going to spin off some additional, and initially they were just going to keep it and use it for their own purposes, but they think they'll be big enough they'll actually be able to send it over the fence, and so some of our colleagues down south who are experts in that are helping through that.
How long have you been working with the district currently?
For HR and contract?
That's right. We help with procurement and HR, and it's been as long as I'm aware, it's been a number of years.
but at least as long as I've been here.
Those efforts are led by Stacy with Jessens, I'm sure you're familiar with. She's at our separate office. Frank and I work really closely with Stacy. We actually have a call set up with her on the way home to talk about a client issue. And then the procurement side is headed up by Mary Beth Coburn, who's actually in our San Diego office, but we work really closely with. Mary Beth was part of the team when we got the M1W work. So we work together all the time.
Yeah, well, in Sacramento.
Yeah. And Frank's actually the supporter of the way up the hill. I'm not, I'm Sacramento proper.
I'd have to all those our vehicles.
Well, we have a few minutes left. Did you have any questions of the board?
Yeah, just, I'm always curious what the, I'm always curious about the driver making a change or at least exploring it. Don't be presumptuous that any change will be made, and then with regards to lessons. So I always want to make sure I don't make the same mistakes, or if I can speak to if there are mistakes, but, I'll use the legal squishy language if there are any, but just kind of curious your experience, what you're looking for, because I want to see, obviously if we are selected, I want to make sure that we hit the ground running right at the beginning.
I'll jump first. I think some of the things, we might all have different answers. I think existing with legal counsel or any kind of representation in that way, when you ask a question that could have, rather creative solutions, or at least the ability to explore those creative solutions, looking to advance opportunities or ideas in a creative way. And I guess the way I would phrase that is, providing as many options as possible with a specific question being asked. And I'll give you the exact example I'm thinking of was, discussing the concept of employee housing, and if that could be something viable by the district. And it was a flat, absolutely not, no way for 4 years. Regardless if I kept asking the question. And then 5th year, it's like, oh wait, there is a creative idea. I'm like, creative, 5 years, that's a long time to get to an answer like that. And I think that small example is indicative to the larger, right? In that I like the option of whenever questions asked, hey, this is the most straightforward way, that's a no. Yeah. But here's 3 other ways we could look at it and get creative and make it yes. And so that to me is really important. It's just the ability to kind of explore ideas and the creative solutions that allow you to get there.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. Those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw rocks, but I'll do it anyways. As legal counsel, sometimes you can unwittingly, I've seen this before, I don't think I've ever been accused of it, but, I won't sit here and be my own apologist, but as legal counsel, sometimes you think you're the de facto 6th board member, and you weigh in a little bit too much on policy, and then your job is to, you confuse best practices or what is common with what the board's options actually are. And I think it's really important, that's that whole, being general counsel's art and science, the whole art piece, that's where that comes into play, and basically exactly what you're talking about is, general counsel's job is to say, listen, this is what if it were me, I would say, this is what I've seen that works. But I will talk to my team, see if there's any other options I'll hear back to, and frankly, as general counsel, my job is to be a broker of information with my own particular view of recommendation, also on the continuum of risk, what is more risky, because I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't do that. But as the board, it is your job to make the policy decision. If you want to go with the thing that no one's ever done and we're saying has a high chance of risk, frankly, go with that. That's your decision. But what my goal is to make sure that you understand that, so when something does happen on the other side, you at least get eyes wide open. And I think sometimes also the reason why you may get a hard no from somebody is because they just don't have the resources or the team to look it up and actually find that out. And I think that's where it goes into our strength of we have the specialists in the area that can try to come up with those creative solutions, or those options, and then the board can decide. what policy direction they want to go.
So just briefly on that, we're really involved in everything that's going on North Shore with employee housing, including we represent the housing JPA that a number of the agencies up there form. It's neither of us who are general counsel, but one of our colleagues is, and I'm his back. So we're pretty familiar with what they're doing up there.
Mountain Housing Council? No, they're,
The Mountain Housing Council, part of those conversations led to the formation of the JPA. It's really led more by the Truckee agencies, and I forget the exact name. It's the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Association or Authority. I think I already butchered that. But the town's involved, the airport's involved, I represent the airport. The PUD is
in the hospital and really involved as well. You know, I mean, let's be honest with what happened during, I mean,
housing's always been a challenge in the basin, but after what happened during COVID with housing prices, it's a crisis, and we just have to be creative to find ways to do it.
and I guess, sorry, and this is some degree out of curiosity, the eventual solution was the JPA approach in agreement with other people. I guess, again, this is just for my own curiosity, was that solution under a rock somewhere? Or did people just in the field know that answer and it took us 5 years to get it?
I'm not really comfortable, on the answer to this.
So
I was just saying that, like, if you talk to our colleagues up there, we've been talking about that as an option for a long time, and it isn't the only option, right? So, North Tahoe, I think I can say, publicly has talked about, we have a lot of land we don't necessarily need. They're looking at doing it themselves, right? So they might join the JPA, they might do it themselves, so it isn't the only way to do it. And then the airport's been doing this stuff even before I was their counsel, and my colleague who was at the firm was their counsel.
And I would just say, sometimes this needs not being recorded.
It is.
I would just say that sometimes people, it's an efficient answer sometimes. They have to say no. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to Frank's point about our philosophy. I mean, sometimes we say no, right? But when we say it, it's because we really don't have anything else, right? Like we always try to get to some yes, or yes, but, or yes, and you should consider these. And I think to Frank's point, we're not the board member, right? We're not going to tell you what you should do, but we're going to say these are the options, these are the pros and cons, risks associated with them.
Yeah. I think, me personally, that's what I'm looking for, is not the answer, but here's your 5 options, each one of them carry this level of risk, and then we can feel as educated as possible to education, right?
Frank, you asked a question, and say that the back office delegation thing can be a two-edged sword. And I'd actually like your feedback on this, but you're part of a company, you have billable goals, you have profitability goals, and you're probably rewarded by the amount of billability that you have. And I guess we have experienced problems where things get delegated to the back office and they turn into science projects. And then we find out when we get the bill sometime later that it was just too much. And so how do you balance your fiduciary responsibility of the board as general counsel with your fiduciary responsibility to your company to keep them busy?
I would just say, to me, it's not listen, it's one of these questions you ask that I'm going to have to sit here and tell you the right thing. But I can only tell you, honest to goodness, we have our firm is one of the largest public agencies, not the largest in California. We have plenty of work, so I don't need to stretch the time here to have the hours to get the billables. It's not. We're here because the work here in the basin is exciting. We want to be a part of it. As far as managing, again, as much as I can do, and as much as Josh can do on the front end, that's always the goal. But if there are specialists that are needed, we can hand the ball off pretty cleanly. But I look at myself as a project manager. So I don't set it and forget it, and then wait 2 weeks and follow up with them. And meanwhile, they went down this absolute rabbit trail of a project that actually was never, it was just maybe a vague question, maybe put some feelers out and turned into this Frankenstein of a legal memo or answer. As general counsel, I'm your project manager, so, you know, I work with the board, you set the scope, or your executive team on what exactly needs to be done, and we work on that. And so frankly, it's just a lack of quality control. To me, there's no fiduciary issue on the table other than it's my duty to serve the board, period, bar none, full stop. That's not even a question. I'm not, the minute you are doing things for your bottom line, frankly, yeah, I don't have to be stronger other than say the bottom line here is anything but that, so.
And I would just say, you know, don't expect you to believe that, right? I mean, you're here to see me, so try for everybody. I would say, you know, I would point to you, what I would point to as an example, it's not just something we say, it's something we live, is our institutional clients, right? So we have clients where we've been their city attorney, we've been their general counsel for 20 or 30 years, right? If we didn't value the relationship, they wouldn't, we still wouldn't be in those positions. So my first big client, I'm the city attorney in Jackson in the foothills. I am the third BBK attorney to be the city attorney in Jackson, and it's not because there was this revolving door of throwing in the new person. It's because people left BBK. One person left to go work for Fish and Wildlife, another person left to go work in the town of Truckee, and I had the opportunity to kind of step into that role. As a firm and, you know, and as a partner in that firm, we value those relationships. And if we focus on our short-term profitability at the expense of our long-term business relationship, we're not gonna be successful.
And also, I've worked at least one of our competitors, and I've also worked in-house, at public agency doing general counsel type work. So I've seen that on both sides, and I think that's BBK is, to me, they're head and shoulders above our competitors in that respect. Like you said, there are some competitors that they'll pick up some clients, their business model is we're going to do lower rates, so they kind of get the interviews in the door. But then they just got control with the time they devote to file the matters. So they, to me, you know, I think our presentation is pretty straightforward as far as that goes. But it's a good question, and yeah, I don't have the DNA to prove the answer, but I think Sean would believe that.
Okay, I'll get a little more, we'll get a second. Well, you know, because of your familiarity with, you know, the other PUDs and everything taking place up north, you know, and as you look at legislation coming out of the state, are there just some, you know, you look at it from the legal perspective, what are some of the challenges you see facing special districts in the Tahoe Basin?
Man, there's so many. So I can start spotting a couple, and then we can get into them. I think the first is the clean air stuff, right? I mean, like, so you know, yes, it's important for us to pay attention to climate change. It's important for us. I think the basin has been demonstrated, been one of the leaders in this area. There aren't electric vehicles that can, you know, operate in ways that we need them to, right? So what happens? So when do we need all of our trucks? When the power goes out, right? Because it's a snowstorm, or it's a wildfire, or all of those. And I know that we're working on a bill to provide, you know, acknowledge that in the basin. But that's a huge challenge, right? Even if we want to be on the forefront of that, you know, sometimes it seems like in Sacramento, it's a one-size-fits-all, and this is a very, very unique place. And that has to be, you know, I think, recognized by regulators. And then the second would be, I think I already mentioned it, I think you're really on the forefront of this, is all the wildfire stuff, right? I mean, like, that is, it's a new world, it's a new paradigm. Like, we have to be, you know, thinking through that. And I know, you know, some of the bills that are working at the state right now, you know, focused on getting additional funding to the basin. Really important. And I think a connection to the wildfire thing is power shutoffs, right? So I understand why we're shutting off power to reduce emission events and all those things. That's important. really hard to operate a water and sewer system without power. So we can put generators everywhere, that's something we should do. But is that really a long-term sustainable approach? Maybe not, right? I mean, so a lot of those aren't necessarily legal issues, but they're legal components to that, and I think it really kind of gets to our approach to these issues, which is we're not the sixth board member, we're not the general manager, but we want to be part of the team, and we want to provide our perspective and what we think are the best ways forward. And then housing, what we were talking about.
All right, and I think I said this at the beginning, you could hear from us as soon as tomorrow, but no later than July 9th.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And the opportunity to be here. Thank you so much.
All right, safe travels down the hill.
Thank you.
Worst things we haven't seen. It's a great idea.
Thanks for making the time.
You guys insurance. When she called she called me now. I think we did some good action. We don't do a lot of litigation. Lost almost all of his friends, and now all of his relatives. Well, we need Josh, right? Yeah, I think Josh was involved in this. I saw Sarah. I won't help her out. Yeah, sure. I think it's going to be so general. I'm trying to know. I mean, the chairs. Yeah, I agree with her. So what panel? The quarantine panel does that. Well, okay. Yeah. So emotional for who was like, yeah. I didn't tell her what song was that. It's also good. Oh, what? Yeah. He said, your phone gets inside the worst time. So you have to go clear on one side. Right. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know on the other side. I overheat the tea and coffee that are rotating to try to think. So, okay, what that's your problem. And let's show them how we try to do this. So, he likes to fish. I was actually surprised when I first did it. But I'm like, get your eyes high. Well, the thing that concerns me is the right on the scroll is in general. How it is. We already knew you were a little bit of that flag. They bring you in, and then, everything's special contact. But I also didn't feel like it was common, right, because you're dealing with, the other two have no retainer, monthly retainer was like, what, 10 hours? That's basically covering board meeting attendance, all that stuff. Right? Yeah, they charge the travel. And so that's just the basic monthly. So, and it was like, yes, for instance, personal income before, never did that. The one that got here, half of that, you'll get your votes, half of them. So this is that's wrong. Very interesting. It's so much math. Well, the general is actually a little higher. Oh, yeah. And then the special is barely regular. I'll leave it till you. Yeah, I think they're all gonna be like doable. So what was the gentleman's name? Josh. So I think, I got a real solid, I would never have him. You got a real good vibe from Josh.
Remember what I heard?
Like you personally, you had good energy. I never seen this. Yeah, that's what I'm totally with.
All right, the next one is just kind of, Steve Collins and Ryan Jones, they're out front, are you ready for them?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, I just had a good treat. With the way which feels good. Well, how the state game go? I didn't even ask a couple weeks ago. We lost in the championship game. Well, that's a heartbreak, but I mean, at least you were there. Anyway. Hello. Both you. Meet you earlier today. How do you? Thank you. Meet you. Thanks. All right. Nice to meet you. Shane, that made it easier. Ryan, show good. How are you? Ryan, go. And we go. I'm Ryan. Yes. A minute ago. We can see your last turn to the interview today. We hope that you have energy. Two more lawyers.
And there's coffee if you want coffee, there's water there too, but there's coffee over there.
Thank you.
So our plan for today is the board was interviewed just 3 firms. And they may make a selection at the end of the process today. And if not, they may still make it into the next board meeting, which is the 6th of July. So the latest you would be notified would be the day following that, so July 7th. And knowing that, are going to take a turn reading the questions so the board can concentrate on the responses and take some notes and take it.
So I didn't catch your names or, Chief Ryan. Right.
I have the cheat sheet over here.
All right, well, I'm going to start off. Describe what you perceive as key issues to be addressed by the South Tahoe Public Utility District's General Counsel. For example, what constitutes 80% of the work? Describe your experience in addressing this work.
80% of the work on a general counsel for a public entity like the South Tahoe Public Utilities District is in the mundane, day-to-day agenda, Brown Act, Public Records Act, and the recurring themes involving elections that come up every couple of years, the budget issues that come up every spring, the kind of things that go unheralded, unseen, that help the district and the agency run smoothly. So most of the work we do isn't flashy, isn't worthy to make a movie about, but it does keep the agency running smoothly and efficiently, and it allows you to pursue the policy goals that you set that we just help facilitate.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, so we do represent similar districts, so I think what we're basing this on experience of what it's like working for other water and sewer, and we do actually fire districts and hospital districts as well, so different types of public utility districts, but water and sewer is certainly within our specialty. The other thing I think I'd add to Keith is we do a lot of contract review, and so I think as you're doing capital improvement projects or even just other special interest projects where you need to get contracts reviewed, that's something we do. We tend to have we like templates that help the staff look at those first, and there's certain bigger ranges of types of projects based on the value, whether it's going to be publicly bidded and potential for bid protests. I think that's another one of those unheralded things that we are associated with. The other thing that gets my attention sometimes with utility districts is when they're going through rate adjustments. So when we're helping with Prop 218, we've had some litigation that spins off of that. You hope that's not part of the 80%, but because that means you're involved in those sorts of extra issues, but that is something that takes a little bit of my time working with public utility districts.
All right. Describe your perspective of the general counsel's role in representing the district and working with the board.
Well, the role is crucial to your functioning, your capacity as policymakers, decision makers. It's been my practice to always provide any advice that I would give to one board member to all board members. There's no favorites amongst attorneys and the elected that we represent. So if there's one particular issue that is of concern to an individual board member, we certainly provide that advice. We do it in a timely way, and we copy all the other board members the opinions that we provide, so that way there's full disclosure. Obviously, we're going to also copy the general manager so that the general manager knows what the board is being advised, and we facilitate those types of discussions with an openness and clarity that allows you to function. And that's a common situation where we face, because elected officials have different goals, different priorities, and so it's one of the things that we do relatively well. And I'll add, the clients that we represent, we've represented for, in some instances, decades. It's our practice to remain with the client for the long haul. And we're able to do that because we are able to help facilitate the working relationships among the various elected officials, so that way they can be successful and we don't get embroiled in differences of opinions. We provide objective analysis and sound legal opinions, generally on the conservative side. Like Brian said, it's our goal to keep you out of as much litigation as possible, but certainly allowing you all the knowledge that you need to make those decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only, if I could add too, is we don't consider ourselves the sixth director. You're the policymakers. We give you a range of advice when it comes to through the pros and cons, especially when it comes to litigation. You want to play something that may not have the highest percentage of winning, that's your call. But we're going to let you know what we've experienced and whether we think that's the right move. I have been involved with other districts where we've replaced somebody because sometimes the general counsel kind of overstepped their bounds and sort of inserted themselves in more of the policy role. We don't see ourselves as doing that. We see ourselves as helping achieve your goal. You tell us what the goal is, and we try to get as creative as we can to figure out how to make that happen. The most, I think, relationship is usually with the general manager, though. General counsel and general manager typically are in communication daily, maybe over text or email or call. With the board members, sometimes we only see you a couple times a month at board meetings. We're certainly open to more dialogue and help you with maybe ethics opinions or conflicts of interest questions, but I would say staff is usually who our communications are primarily with.
All right. How do you go about managing or overseeing specific legal assignments that the district outsources to other firms, such as litigation, to ensure that the best interests of the district and the board are being represented cost-effectively, efficiently, and genuinely?
Well, the first thing we do is we analyze what we believe the legal exposure is and the risk and the likelihood of success, so that the board knows at the outset what it's trying to achieve by outsourcing the legal work. We get an idea of the budget that you like to spend. We identify potential causes of action that are being claimed, potential outcomes and alternative solutions. We try to keep it from the courtroom at all possible. And then if the decision is made to outsource the work to a specialized firm, which we don't typically need to do, our firm has a team of highly skilled attorneys that are dedicated just to litigation. Environmental law, Prop 218, we can handle most of the litigation that you would face in-house. But if there is a need to go outside, we would first identify the legal risk. What are your goals for the outcome of the litigation? What's your budget like? And then we would screen the potential attorneys that you are thinking of hiring. And we would work closely with them to communicate the board's expectations with them and monitor the spend. We're certainly not going to overbill or double bill because you already have attorneys working on it, but we will monitor what motions they're filing, whether or not these are necessary motions, if they're designed to pad their billing. If it's something that's going to lead to your goals, we're going to make sure that we're your eyes and ears overlooking that other attorney's project. And we do that Not often, because again, we have attorneys that handle these things ourselves and in-house. But when it does happen, we're very successful at helping keep the costs down and the results, favorable to our clients.
Great. Describe your experience with agency consolidations or incorporations.
Well, we've helped cities cities and other clients review their charters. We've helped other agencies manage charter initiatives to change the functioning of their basic principles of government. One of our clients is a utilities district on the Central Coast, and they've had questions typically about how to restructure the membership of their board, and whether or not we can have a 5-member board become a 7-member board, and what changes would need to what steps would need to happen for those changes to occur. We've also dealt with it was a fire district, I believe, where they wanted to expand their territory, so we deal with annexations. It's a very common occurrence where we have to deal with LAFCO to change the boundaries. This district is in a unique situation given that we're so close to Nevada, and there may be extra state issues that we would have to assist you with. We know that your electric provider is a Nevada-based company, and that may provide some opportunities to work with them collaboratively and even go outside the state in terms of the services that you provide. So there's a lot of issues that this district is facing that we believe we can help them.
I have one more just practical experience of that too. Is Keith mentioned annexation. I did help a water district in the Sacramento area that wanted to bring in a private water district. So they were providing subpar water to their residents, and that water district was making a lot of money. They didn't want to sell to a public entity that I was representing, but we were able to negotiate terms with them. There was a threat of eminent domain as one of them. So one of the we went through annexation, talked about with LAFCO, worked with the CPUC to see about bringing them in. In the end, we were able to negotiate a deal, but we talked because they were providing such inadequate service to the local residents. The idea of eminent domain, because if the public wasn't being provided good quality water, was an argument that resonated with them and with the local residents. We were able to bring them in. So I think annexation of local neighboring districts that you want to bring into your fold is something we've had experience with personally.
Okay. Describe the firm's experience in dealing with mediation, fact-finding, and arbitration.
Well, that would be within the wheelhouse of our team of litigators. They have decades of experience amongst the 7 or 8 attorneys that we have dedicated to litigation and mediation. I'm sure you've seen in our proposal the attorneys that we put forward that would assist the district in litigation and arises. We have seasoned trial attorneys. We have a bank of knowledge of mediators that we choose from, that we use in different counties, in the major areas of the state, where we have a pool of mediators that we have experience with and that are highly favorable in terms of conducting fair hearings and that are generally understanding of the pressures that public agencies face, and so they can give us a fair shake. We have plenty of experience in all of the different areas that are common to public agencies.
Although the district currently has separate representation for labor issues, please describe your experience in employment law, including progressive discipline, terminations, claims, negotiations, mediations, and lawsuits.
So we also have a team of labor attorneys. We have a labor and employment team of attorneys who handle every one of those issues. We handle the progressive discipline early on in the process. It's our preference that we be brought in early with your HR department, so we can assist, guide that progressive discipline plan, and create that strong record that you're going to need if and when a termination results or a lawsuit or a discrimination claim is brought, that we are involved in that process early on, and that there's documentation of all of the steps that we've taken, and that the district has not gone straight from 0 to 60, but has gone through the steps necessary in this state where we have very favorable laws that favor the employee over the employer, we make sure that our clients are keyed into that record that needs to be made before those decisions are made.
If I get back up to, let me give you a little overview of the firm. Just keep the reference different teams that we have. So we're 38 lawyers roughly that we have statewide that represents all types of only public entities. We don't have any private clients at all. So we do have different areas of specialty. Keith and I would be general counsel specialists. We represent local governments in this kind of capacity where we're at a boardroom helping you with parliamentary procedure, with Brown Act, ethics issues, whatever comes up. We also have certainly some experience in litigation in the labor, but we pull from our deep bench of attorneys, which includes specialists in labor and employment. How we do it with our respective clients. You would interface with one of the two of us. Keith as the lead, me as the backup, you chose to work with us. If you wanted to talk to our labor specialists, you certainly could. But a lot of times what we do for trying to make it easier for you is you communicate to us and we work with our specialists and get back to you on that. But I would say that one of the initial questions general manager asked about the 80%, labor tends to be in that. I do think that there's a lot of stuff that comes up because you have so many employees that, you know, Family Medical Leave Act, maybe discipline. There's just things that come up that sometimes are very quick and we can handle it. We've got the experience. Sometimes we'll bring in our labor specialists because it's going to be a little more. We're looking towards a path maybe towards termination or more significant discipline. So I think to give you a little background on what our firm is about, we're just a couple of two partners that specialize in general counsel work.
We have a follow-up question on that. So, you know, after you would have, you know, say it's an employment issue, how does the management from us, our conversation to you, and then you delegating it kind of further down the line, time, expectation, costs, that I know is going to be something very important to us on the board, is based on past experiences when things were formed out, the scope wasn't terribly defined, the future costs and what we were going to get at was not terribly defined, so I know that's something we're all very concerned of.
So I wouldn't use the term farmed out because
You know what I mean, yeah, I apologize.
because we work closely, our firm is statewide. We do have two offices, but Brian and I as general counsel work directly with these other attorneys. We talk with them on a daily basis. We manage the workflow and the workload that we have with the clients that we represent. And so if I have an attorney working under me, so to speak, on a labor issue, I'm working with that attorney directly daily on this and other projects. And so it's rare, if ever, that a project falls through the cracks. And given the sensitivity of a lot of these employment issues and other issues, we have a very tight turnaround. And we invite you to speak with some of our references about how responsive we are to our clients. We recognize that the number one complaint amongst clients of their attorneys is they don't return my calls. And I think they charge too much money. And I think you'll also see that our rates are very competitive. So we typically take care of those two big concerns that most people have with lawyers. So we are very responsive.
What about the flip side of now, like not being unresponsive, but rather maybe going down rabbit holes or other things? I think that's what he was getting at with the scope being defined and not just going off and all of a sudden coming back with a huge billable thing that was, you know, to use a term I heard, like the, you know, $1 million answer for the $10 question, you know? That's a really, I think like, really, well, what usually your key staff member on the general counsel, the general manager is who would tell us what the scope is. Because, right, a 20-page memo that could have been answered in a text that suggests you can do that. I would consider us as very practical lawyers, okay? We get it because you're dealing with public, first off, it's public money, right? So it's not corporate money where you sort of have a limitless, but we set expectations really, well, you said it with us, but then with the people we're working with, this is a project that needs to take 1 to 2 days, should be 4 to 5 hours, and we're gonna manage that. So I think Keith's right. If you talk to our other clients, they would realize, I think our mantra is very responsive and very affordable, but yet high quality work, because we're not in business of overbilling because it's the easiest way to end a client's relationship. Sure.
Which is, I said, rare for our firm, given that we've been with several clients for decades, and many of our clients are in more of the remote parts of the state. and their budgets are finite, like all agencies are, but especially in those more rural areas. And so we have experience managing those costs and keeping them down. Thank you. Good question.
Okay. Number 7, what is your legal experience related to government finance, including debt financing and legal review of contract documents?
So our firm regularly assists our clients issuing bonds. We don't do the actual bond work. That's a very specialized niche of work, and so that is one of, on a hand, I can tell you the things that we don't do, and bond counsel is one of them. But we do review the bond documents and the resolutions to issue the bonds. That's part of our bread and butter. We also assist our clients with the procedural aspects of rate setting, fee setting. Our firm has been instrumental in advising our clients to adopt rates and fees for accessory dwelling units, which is all the rage in California now. That the housing is priority number 1 in the state, and so agencies are trying to find housing wherever they can, and so providers of water and sewer services are forced with how do we set the rates for this, and how do we get our costs covered for these connections that are cropping up in people's backyards. And so we've advised our clients in many cases that square footage of the additional unit is the best, most legally defensible formula for how to set those rates. And so we advise our clients on Prop 218 process, dealing with any public protests which have never derailed that fee that we've seen yet. And that's how we've done it in the past.
I just have one particular example. So I'm the general counsel for San Juan Water District, which is in Folsom, Citrus Heights area, and we just recently had to finance a huge, it's called the Hinkle Reservoir, $100 million capital improvement project. We don't have the money. They don't have the money for that. So we worked through the state revolving fund. I think it's SRF funding is how we went through that financing process. So when it comes to major infrastructure project, we build a new wastewater treatment plant. We've done that for a couple different jurisdictions where we help facilitate, because they usually want somebody in the state water controller or state water resources board will ask their general counsel's office will want our memo on how we look through all, make sure the resolutions were passed properly to help do the financing. And I know I've done that at least 4 times with other water and sewer districts, so we have personal experience making that happen.
Okay. Our last question, please provide us with a closing statement on why your firm should be chosen to be our next general counsel.
Well, if I could just reiterate the things that we've said are kind of the themes that characterize the time in my practice. We're very practical attorneys. We have experience in the run-of-the-mill issues that all public agencies face. We have clients who can key you into this if you care to call and check our references. We invite you to do that. Ryan and I both have worked well together as partners for our other agencies. We have a team of attorneys behind us that we manage and that we guide. So it's not just the collective knowledge of the 2 attorneys that you see before you, but it's 35, 38 attorneys that we have working as part of our firm. The attorneys that we have at our firm are also very committed to our firm, and they're loyal, and we have just a family atmosphere of high-achieving, organized, and dedicated attorneys. When I got into this field of law, it was because I wanted to have an impact. I didn't want to do other areas of law where the lawyers complained about their clients or the type of mundane work that they do, and I've never had a day where I thought I didn't matter, where I didn't make a difference in some community where we were working. We can point to projects that we've done, and that's something real and tangible that you can feel good about as an attorney, even if you're just doing the behind-the-scenes work. We know that there are a lot of issues facing a district like the South Tahoe Public Utilities District. You probably, like most agencies where you have aging infrastructure, and you're probably thinking about how to replace some of that. You're probably thinking about how you can get some energy efficiency upgrades to your facilities. Our firm helps agencies all the time with the provisions of the government code that allow relaxing of the bidding process and a design-build process when the energy savings are more than the cost of the improvements, which is something that I'm sure the district is considering doing. If you're like other wastewater treatment facilities and providing of that service, you're probably thinking about a biomass facility where you can take some of the raw sewage that you're taking and use it and put it to good use. And there may be some other agencies that are against that particular land use. Our few attorneys, Ryan and I, do a lot of land use, can help you achieve those goals if that's on your radar. That's on the radar of a lot of our other agencies. So, like Ryan said, we don't come in here with an agenda. Our agenda is to help you do your agenda. And we're excited to be a part of that. We hope you'll give our firm, thoughtful consideration, and we really hope you'll give us a good look.
Enough said.
Any questions from the board? Clarifying questions or?
Yeah, just so currently we're negotiating a PPA or. Right, no, but were we completed with that now?
We're completed.
We're completed with that. That is, and this is kind of gets to a two-part question. So, just assuming based on what you said, you'd have kind of previous experience with kind of the PPA process. And then another side question I had, in that same vein though, is as we looked at renewable options here at the district for a whole host of different reasons, one of the great limiting factors, the single greatest limiting factor was the existing tariff structure that we're operating under the CPUC. So does your firm, assuming you have PPA experience, kind of what's relationship with the CPUC, if anything, just, kind of throw that at you?
Let me take that one because I actually am in the middle of a PPA as well. So we have purchased power purchase agreements with an entity called BC&E that's trying to negotiate with an outfit that has a wastewater treatment plant. And we are probably similar to where you guys are. We've passed the PPA, now we're trying to work with the CPUC. So I'm frankly in the middle of that. It is the first time we've worked with that particular thing. We have experience working with the CPUC in other annexation cases. So I think our experience there will translate, but it's sort of it's definitely a new area of expansion for districts like yours. So I do think we have the experience to help you with that, but it's definitely a dynamic one. Unless you got anything else to add.
No, we dealt with the CPUC in other areas that they regulate railroads, and some of our clients have issues involving land use with the local railroad, and the CPUC is generally loath to cede control over their turf, so to speak, when some of these railroads aren't operating as utilities, but just as excursion trains. So generally, we found that the CPUC is not the most unresponsive of state agencies, but they do provide challenges for local agencies. But we have experience with dealing with the state. They try to bully smaller agencies pretty regularly. We do our best to stand up for our clients and get a fair shake, and we talk directly with their general counsel and their staff person, so that way they recognize that you're being represented by competent counsel, and they can't just, bully you into what their plans are for the state when it may not jive with what's going on in South Lake Tahoe.
Keith, since you've been on board with San Juan, has their PPA come up for review or change?
It hasn't. So I don't know when and if that's going to come up, but that's not the entity I was talking about. There's an outfit outside in Colusa County, a little north of Sacramento, where we're actively past the PPA. But San Juan hasn't come up yet under my tenure, so maybe that's to come.
They purchased their solar farm, and but they had a long-term contract. I didn't know if that came up for review or change, or that's it.
I was curious, looks like a lot of your experience is essentially outside of the Lake Tahoe Basin. Do you see any challenges in terms of dealing with some of the other additional regulatory loops that we need to jump through here in Tahoe?
No, not at all. We're pretty comfortable reviewing the regulations and the hurdles that may be applicable for this particular area. Like I said, we have clients in remote parts of the state. It's not unusual for us to have to travel to meet with people face to face We like a hands-on approach. We recognize that you meet twice a month, earlier in the day. That's totally fine with us. We don't have any problem getting here and enjoying the beautiful place where you guys live and serve.
This is January, right?
Yeah. Always see you before board meetings. That's really benefit.
We have represented the city of South Lake Tahoe on a couple of specialty projects and code enforcement stuff, so there's a familiarity with, I get it, there are some extra additional issues that I think that are making it a little more complicated in the region than maybe the city of Sacramento or something, but, so we have some experience in the area.
Anything else from the board?
Thank you.
It's been a long day for you, I'm sure. No, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming up.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else from us?
I don't think so.
No, I heard the time, I was curious about what the status of your current general counsel, or that person's applying, why they're leaving, if there's any light you're willing to shed that's not confidential or inappropriate.
Fired us, we're terrible.
Yeah.
Just that side of the table.
They were general counsel for over 20 years. And it's a large firm, and there was several factors that caused us to reevaluate the relationship, but the biggest one was probably that delegating to the back room. It was kind of a conflicted fiduciary responsibility to us versus to the firm. And so some projects that got delegated back were not, they became rabbit hole exercises that cost us way too much money. And when it became cumulative, we all of a sudden said, okay, we probably need to put this thing back out on the street and see.
We can kind of tell by your questions sort of what our issues have been, and so now that makes a lot of sense.
It's just time too. I mean, obviously you want to invest and get a partnership going long term, but you know, sometimes things can deviate and that can lead to just straying into areas that maybe a general counsel position or other, you know, even legal services goes a little too deep into other areas, you know.
Me personally, I think it's part of our role as being on the board is to kind of check in occasionally. I think it was kind of an open-ended agreement that was never really checked.
No, at this building.
And
We're around for a long time.
well, I was just going to say, I think something, and you guys keyed in on this, but I think something for me personally was when asking a question, there was more of a definitive no always. And I don't mind, you know, as you get a kind of a suite of options, if you're like, this is the safest, most conservative option, this is the most liberal 1% is going to work, and give all the caveats and kind of descriptions that are needed in those different options. I personally didn't feel like that was presented to me. And I also, kind of adding on to that, when it got into the litigated space where things get expensive and costly and, you know, all the things that go into it, all the variables at play that we as the board should have been considering were not presented to us in a manner I would have appreciated or I deemed acceptable from an attorney to provide me. It was the things I wanted to hear. It was simpler. It was going to be easy. We were to get there. Then, and I understand how complex the legal world is and how things can go against you, so it's not sour grapes. But at some level, you have to see some of the shoes that could drop at the onset, because if you don't, I don't know what shoes are going to drop either, but I'm not charging that hourly rate. And so that was always very concerning to me, is that kind of being told what I wanted to hear without a full description of the variables and caveats that needed to be considered with each decision, and just frankly likelihood of success given, you know, different litigative actions that we've had to pursue over the years.
Yeah, it's certainly a balance between going down that rabbit hole and giving you all the options. And it's our role to ascertain what it is that you're looking for. And we do that very well.
Yeah, I think, Brian, you answered it earlier too, that the need for an upfront risk analysis.
That's what's considered. And I'm really, by the way, this is right.
Yeah, just, you know, rather than just turning it into litigation, deciding whether to turn it into litigation, decide the action before spending $500,000 and then on legal fees and then saying, okay, we want to go to mediation.
Right.
You know, that, we don't want to, those are the things that.
We hear the same, it's interesting, you hear the same issues over and over, yet firms still make this mistake over and over, but think about it, we're a little different, because we hope we're right in that hybrid mix of, you mentioned the big firms, so the big firms will charge a lot, and they're gonna have a lot of younger attorneys who are needing to bill hours and stuff, you know, justify the big offices. So we're not a big 300-person firm. But you also can't exist with a mom and pop firm who, you know, just kind of does this on the side, maybe with other things. So this is our specialty. We have, you know, roughly 40 lawyers who just do this. So we think we're the right combination for a district like your size. You know, if you're City of Oakland or something, we get it. Like you're going to go to a different outfit. But, you know, hopefully it works. You know, it's got to be a win-win for both sides. So. That's it. Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. You're welcome. Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Thank you. So long. Thank you. Okay. I really appreciate it. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. All right, safe travel. Thank you. I could have probably seen that figure before. Conference? Should we take 5? No, that's registration. I'm going to go to hospital shit in San Diego. Oh, really? Oh, wow. I know. Why is that? Why is that? I'm going to that's you. Like Monterey. That was at Monterey. Is that the special district? Yeah. You talk about you.
And barbecue. I mean, really, that's going through my mind most times.
Okay. How do we roll through this? Do you want to just say who, I mean, how deep do you want to have deliberation if everybody's on the same page? Do a 1, 2, 3, a little forced ranking kind of thing, or strong poll? There you go.
So, show of hands, who had, White, Brenner as number 1?
Is that right? The first?
Yeah. BB&J. Joe Hunter. That's your number 1?
Yeah.
I probably, sorry, I was waffling as you were doing that, so I ruined it for everybody. Full disclosure. But I would probably go.
It's more, my answer's more nuanced than just raising my hand, just so you know.
Yeah. 1 and 3 is where I was thinking. The 1 and 3 is where I was thinking.
Number 1 and number 2.
Right, and I could, I mean, if it's okay, I'd give kind of pluses. I thought, I'm just going to go with 1 and 3. So, White team, I thought, or changing my mind now, I thought their answers were excellent. I thought their responses, how they looked at kind of delegation, kind of problem solving, I thought was great. I thought, you know, everything they said was, you know, was a great answer. And so I really liked kind of that candid response, and they kind of picked on a lot of different things. Third team as well, their presentational kind of elements I thought was spot on. I appreciated kind of the relationship with smaller districts and kind of understanding kind of those budgetary constraints. I think is going to be really important. I mean, you know, something you had said probably initially, Dave, that kind of got me thinking about it, but in the backroom discussion as you had brought it up, and both the first and third team really, I felt, kind of addressed that question the best. And so that's kind of where I sit. I wouldn't say with either of the groups I'm married to either, but those were the ones that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely 1 and 3 were my top candidates. And
I think it was and I wouldn't even call them small firms, I mean, it's more medium-sized, with that right balance of, you know, being able to make calls, immediately, as a pretty skilled general counsel, but then also knowing when to kind of activate other aspects of their firm. And it sounded like they had pretty good bench, both of them, but they're pretty targeted, right, to our line of work. And then also just the wherewithal to say, and if it's not, you know, we're the first to say we're going outside, being able to manage that. And so a couple things stuck with me is, at least the first one was more of, you know, how to manage that situation and not get too deep with your own in-house skill or in-house counsel. And I just felt they would be more responsive and more transparent about a lot of that. And so, yeah, I think the Jones and Meyer to me had more of a polished general counsel feel to them. And it just, I don't know, it resonated with me. The big thing for the first firm, Brenner, is, you know, you'd be dealing with the principal, he was our guy, in the seat. And so, like he said himself, you know, being able to activate or do whatever within his firm, he had direct access to do that. So it's definitely a selling point. But I don't know what it was about the succinctness and about the third firm, but that just kind of put it above for me in terms of just being able to be confident in you know, how they're articulating their rationale. And I thought it was actually pretty nice. It wasn't a long-winded, you know, convoluted answer. It was pretty actually direct and pretty spot on, honestly.
Where you weren't filling the time.
Yeah.
I would agree with everything that Nick said, and I did for some reason, maybe Dave by saying that he had contacted, you know, the family district and heard good things about him, but I did feel the most comfortable listening to them, to the last.
They great.
Yeah, and I like their mannerisms, I like their body language. I just felt comfortable with them.
I guess for me, I think any of the groups that serve as our general counsel, I was actually surprised with White Brenner. I thought they actually were very responsive and they were really speaking a lot of the language that I wanted to hear with their responses. I think BB&K, I didn't think they did a great job in the interview, but there's definitely, I think it was Josh, he was representing well, and it seems like he's very has kind of deep knowledge of a lot of the issues that are here in like Tahoe, and just his familiarity with TCPUD and NTPUD and TRCE and all the other Tahoe-related groups. Also, just their history with us. They're very efficient. They work with our staff. They turn around. They're not big on billables. I don't know if Paul maybe even attest to that, but it sounds to me like our experience thus far on some of that site support that we do with them has been solid. Jones Myers, I think I was a little bit taken aback by this catch right up to what's going on here in Tahoe. I just felt like that was a little bit of a negative for them. I thought they did themselves well. But I guess ultimately any of them can probably serve as well. Again, the way I would rank would be probably BB&K, White Brenner, and Jones Myers. That's just for those reasons.
I was thinking, is it all right to just jump in? I don't know if that's what we're doing. But, because I had probably that same concern from Jones Meyer, James, that you brought up in regard to kind of lack of Tahoe experience. But then I, was thinking, and next to CRTA and everything, like, is from what their charge is going to be with the district, does the innate kind of uniqueness of Tahoe, is that
Like state regulation.
Exactly. That's kind of where I got to.
Yeah, but I mean, they're dealing with the majority of California.
So it's not like you need to know the TRPA code is what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's TRPA, and then, there's, we're going to the recycled water strategic plan. There might be an option of moving our, effluent off into Nevada. So, I mean, that seems like you want to have some knowledge.
Would you give me your top three again? Sorry, I missed it.
BB&K, White, Brenner, and Joe here. That's where I'm at. And again, I think it wasn't so much as how you represented here, although again, White, Brenner did surprise me. I just think DBAK, their reputation precedes their presence and their interviewing capabilities, so that's kind of where I'm at.
So I had, Jones-Meyer first and White Runner second. They were ranked pretty close, 39 for Jones-Meyer and 36 for White Runner, but I have BB&K Wiley's down at 26. I felt like, between White Runner and Jones-Meyer, Jones-Meyer really got me with the practical work. You know, they're not gonna, I felt like they had our fiduciary back better, and after talking with San Juan, that they proved it through their recommendation.
So what did San Juan, when you reached out to them, I didn't get kind of that full background on what they did.
They had their previous firm was a little bit bigger, and did a lot of water rights and spent a lot of money and money, and so they got this new firm on, and they said it's what they wanted. Because the 80% of the work, just like Ryan said, is boring, just day to day stuff that isn't in the news. And that's San Juan, like us, I think wants them to do that for way less money than Gary's firm was doing it. And, give us answers, give it without sending it to the back office and keeping 42 interns busy for the summer. I know White Runner would do that too. But for me, kind of the biggest difference was just, I like these two guys better than I liked the first two people. And, they were polished. They were a little different. These two sat back. They were sit back people. Like you say, Nick, they were succinct and to the point. But the first two, what was his name? He was leaning forward, sleeves rolled up, get in there, and so I kind of like that, but yet, I'm not sure we need that. If in our program management and our engineer or whatever, I want somebody who's going to lean forward and pull their sleeves up and, get excited about something. I thought he was kind of a lean forward, excited about, moving up. She sat back and she was real awkward the whole first 80% of the interview. Right at the end of the closing statement, it seemed like she finally kind of warmed up. But I just didn't. I really liked Keith.
Now Keith was not the tan one.
Right. Keith was the tan.
Oh, Keith was the tan one?
Ryan done it. Oh, there's a can't keep name straight on this.
That was Keith.
I like Brian.
Oh, yeah.
He's very good. The other here is close to the other too. That's the other thing I was looking for is because I wonder why you balance things out each other.
Why Ryan was answering all the questions. But that was Keith. But I really like Ryan. Keith, I guess a little bit less, but I guess for me that was kind of the coin flipper between White Brenner and Jones-Meyer. I kind of figured both of them were going to be good at just handling the day-to-day stuff without burying us in invoices. They'll both manage third-party litigation well. I think was it White Brenner that said that they were going to do the audit up front?
Yeah.
I like that.
That was
That was a good thing.
at no charge.
Yeah.
And at no charge and do that.
I'm not sure what it would involve, but kind of It wasn't the in charge thing, it was kind of coming in and saying, we're gonna spend some time to learn your district, on us. And I kind of like that, you know. But BB&K, I just, I don't know, I asked him a hard question, I didn't think they answered it very good. He was passionate that, you know, I'm gonna be your project manager, and I think that answer would have been better than if Gary was sitting there doing the same thing. Gary was not a very good project manager to keep his back office in line, and doing the proper amount of work. Felt like he was a little bit more passionate that he would do that, and I'm not sure I believe him.
I like, honestly, BB&K wise, I mean, I would have rather had Josh as our general, you know, because he was way more experienced with not only some of our partner agencies, like in the sewer and water business specifically, and just seemed, I don't know, personality wise was just a better fit, I felt.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I'd just say with the first White Brenner was the audit, I thought that was very attractive, that whole notion of them really getting to know us.
Did you do a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
I did the spreadsheet.
Oh, wait, that's no, you didn't. You see how I did great at that.
Oh,
Appreciate that. I don't know, you guys are welcome to the pictures, but, so the audit, and the other thing that really caught my ear was their connection with what's going on in Sacramento in terms of what's upcoming and
lobbying farm.
or just having kind of their ear to the ground and understand what's coming down the pike, you know, I guess. So that to me was something that I thought was, that the White Brenner really brought to the table. So
To be a double-sided sword.
that's good to know what's coming, you know, just for, especially us because it affects us, right?
Yeah. Do we want you also get saddled with some of that baggage? Lobbying creates baggage. And so, like, I agree with your point completely, but there is kind of a negative side to it too.
It's expensive. So, straw poll, I think three of us had the on fire, or, yeah, I think of pronunciation. Nick, you were kind of,
I was probably white.
you had a tie.
Yeah, probably white burner. I was very probably inverse of where you were, but like in that space. Yeah, like, well, I kind of was thinking like if, you know, you guys, if some was in agreement of one, that would be fine with me, you know what I mean? Probably more of that space.
And Jane, you had BB&K.
Or white.
Or white.
Yeah. And again, so again, I guess I'm thinking of, you know, we're already like working with BB&K. To me, it seems like from a managerial perspective, it's kind of easy.
It would probably create the most seamless transition. And, you know, when initially my first thought of when we started this process was, yeah, it's really going to be neat if BB&K applies because we do have a great relationship with them, and they are very good at managing their work and their time. But when one of the major goals of going through this process was to try to segregate some of the work, this wouldn't accomplish that. Then, when we actually got the proposals, and my first crack at them, Jones Manor was the first one that stood out to me. And I actually contacted Dave immediately because I saw that they had experience with Salem on Water, and I wanted to find out what his experience was with them. And he didn't have any at that time. And yeah, he got that feedback from Aqua. But they stood out to me because, I don't know, it just felt like even though they're not local, it kind of felt like a local firm. they are smallish. They had a good client list, but not giant clients. And the rates were really reasonable. And yeah, they were the first one to actually catch my eye.
Which is not the Jones Mayor?
Yeah, Jones Mayor.
I guess to me, like some of the other like nuanced rate schedules, things like that, retainers, costs for travel, stuff like that. To me, you know, it's not really transparent to me just yet. I just don't really have a good sense of how that all shakes out. You know, because we do have lower rates for the White Brenner, Jones Mayor.
Well, it's going to come down to, and I think probably all three of them said it, when talking about costs. it's the associated time, not necessarily the freight, that really is driving it.
Efficiency will make them better.
Yeah.
Because they're all kind of right there. I mean, BD&K is a lot higher. I mean,
Yeah.
the general rate's $225 for White Runner, $290 for BD&K.
No cost for travel.
$230. No, there's cost for travel.
Just for, BB&K?
Yeah, they all had IRS mileage rates, all that.
What some of them specifically stated was whether or not they charge for travel for board meetings.
Okay.
So if there were other things they had to attend, yeah, they would.
That's the majority of what they would do for us in board
Yeah.
meetings.
Because that's all covered in their retainer, but the other ones, I was covered in their monthly retainer.
I did really like the White Brenner, where they had said, kind of, with our like, legal counsel, like, hey, if you don't need us, we won't show up. Whereas like it exists now, you're like, oh, you're going to be, I'm going to be there. I'm inviting myself to the party. I did appreciate it. Because, frankly, like, legal counsel isn't always needed. It's cool.
So one other small factor, and this is very personal, but the first guy, Doug, was lapsed into kind of mumbling, and then he'd come out of the mumble with a burst, and for me, I can't hear the mumbling. All I hear is the burst, and it blows me on the way through.
So you missed half of the
Especially if you're turning up behind you to try to hear him through the mumbling. And so it's like, God, I go listen to this guy every board meeting. So, but, both Keith and Ryan, I just was able to hear better. I could hear every word. And it's always bugs me when I can't hear a word, period. Even after I told him on multiple occasions, I can't hear you, can pull the microphone.
I like Jones Meyer answer about the CPUC as well. I don't know, like, all of them seemed more creative in solution than we're getting now.
Well, can you tell me something today? I had no idea the CPUC had any regulatory authority.
and, communications.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan said that also about the one question about consolidations. Let's get an example. White Runner, I didn't quite follow. I didn't think their answer was very solid, but Ryan's specific example of, got a water district, they're taking over a private water company, or they went through that, right? Sacramento just fairly recently. It was kind of like, well, that's kind of helpful. Yeah,
Exactly what we're doing now, yeah.
much more than the other ones. I thought it was a very good answer for us. So anyway, I still think even after this roundtable, I don't disagree with how I rated them to begin with.
I mean, I could see my way into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty firm with,
Because of,
with my initial choice.
But like to your point, I think, all in all, they had the best answers. We represented the best. I mean, it's hard.
And I think they were the shortest internet.
Yeah.
That's what blows that line.
That's what speaks a lot to their efficiency.
And you did mention
Long-winded
that
lawyers.
they have done a couple things for the city, like Tahoe.
Yeah, like you do experience other things, which.
And I really like that they were in the small community. Because dealing with like a budgetary reality, I think they referenced Oakland, it's just a completely different reality than it is in South Lake or these other communities in Northern California. Right, like what we're existing is just much, much different. I think that experience, just from a budgetary and kind of managerial perspective, is really helpful too.
So, anybody have strong feelings against Jones Butter?
Paul, if you could just reflect again on BB&K and like this need to keep some of that work separate from our general counsel. Is that something that's really important to you, or what is it that?
I think it's more important to decide if that's important to the board. That was my
It
understanding.
seems like a diversity of representation.
That was my whole thing, and that's what kind of the support for diversity.
That's why I asked the question before we started, like, what are we looking for in this position, right? And, you know, I will admit that all three of these firms seem like they would internalize a lot more work than maybe I expected, right? Like you're talking about, like your HR stuff. It's like, oh yeah, we got somebody for that. Oh yeah, we got somebody for that. So I don't know, out of all three of them, we're kind of in the same boat, I think, for all three of them. It's just who's going to be more either efficient or actually make a call of, yes, we may need a separate firm for that as a specialty or something. So I don't know, because I was thinking about that the whole time, like which one's going to say, like, yes, we have all these relationships with these other firms that have these specialties and we're efficient and this is what we do in more general counsel representation. But as I heard it more, I got a little more comfortable with it because it was really about, we had the general counsel role experience, but we also have these resources and can be more efficient about it, right? Because outside counsel for specialty issues is going to cost a lot of money, right? And even if it's our general counsel helping negotiate that and everything, it may cost us more than having it in-house.
Right, exactly. And that's where, like, the strength on that bench is BB&K.
I felt they all kind of had it. So I thought that going in. I thought BBK would be the more turnkey, but they're all kind of like that. And it sounded to me like they all gave me examples of experience with those specialty areas that I felt comfortable with.
Yeah, like I said, I think any of these would be fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what works best and what is gonna.
I think part of the thing of keeping them separated, although it isn't a requirement, is, and maybe it's just kind of the moment we live in now because of billing and things we've dealt with, but having those things separated doesn't put all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And allows it to, you know what I'm saying, like you maintain a relationship that's been positive since, you know, I think, since before Melanie was here, with BB&K. But then, you know, you're not getting into, you know, as we put everything with them, similar situations we have now. I'm not to imply that they're going to do that, but it does give us a whole range of options in terms to our legal services if we break them apart.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on circumstance, right, and how we're feeling. And I think what it results in is us being required, or even the GM being required, to have a little more hands-on with what's going on, right? And I think that can shield us for that, because financially, it may be just fine to not break it apart, right? I think what you started with saying there is that that's kind of what we've experienced, and now we're like, oh, that's how we have to do it. But maybe if there's more transparency and a better relationship with who's in the seat here, and we're feeling more confident about that, we're seeing it with projects and billing come in, maybe we can overcome that. And if not, maybe we do have to split it apart and ask for separate service agreements and other things.
What does that current agreement with BB&K look like? How do we partition that off?
That's through.
Like how is it Gary handled on that? Like why did we decide to go to BB&K for some things and not others?
I'm trying to remember, it was a long time ago.
Was it us? Was it staff, or was it Gary?
No, it was staff.
Okay.
It was staff. Staff decided that they wanted separate representation for contract, construction contract work. And Gary's firm did. He put his name in the hat. But BB&K won that. But what I can't remember is who was doing it beforehand. If Gary's firm was doing it, and you said you weren't here.
Yeah, they were already here.
Yeah, I can't remember how it was
We go back to that, back in the day when, we had local legal counsel, our general counsel, we had Jeff Sayer, and then we had John Weidman from Placer.
Yeah, it
It could go back to that.
So we kind of lost type of representation. Gotcha.
True in-house.
So I guess to flip the 180, to kind of Shane's, suggestion, is there any benefit to having it all under one house that would outweigh some of the other things we mentioned to kind of weigh that from third? I mean, I'm looking at you, Dave, honestly, just to see, like, having your past relationships, like what you've seen and what worked, what didn't work.
Well, that's what I want to get away from, actually. Okay. You know, because I don't believe them. I've been in a big firm. I mean, your job is to go market work and feed the machine. You know, you got 100 people sitting in cubes, and you got to keep them busy. You know, so that's how big firms operate, and so that's what I wanted to get away with this process. But thinking of the two small firms, they did offer to delegate, but I think it was actually White Runner that said, that offered up, if there's anything on our invoice that we disagree with, they write it off without question. Line it out, don't pay it.
But it's only happened 3 times.
Nobody else done that. Whether they are true about that or not, it indicated that, I think you said that they don't have metrics that they're graded on, to keep the back office busy. There's no, principal metrics or something. So he's not motivated to be a fiduciary for the firm. I don't think the last firm was either, but they weren't as clear in their assertion of that. But that's the main thing about a big firm. I know from experience. I worked for CH2M Hill and HDR, and both of them, it's like, the firm first, as far as, that's where your bread and butter. If you're going to pay a dance, you're going to increase your salary and everything, then you've got to feed more people in the back office. So I think, let me ask you a different question. Irrespective of the firms, what did people think of Keith versus Doug? As our person in the chair, Keith versus Doug, start Paul. Go right on the table.
They're very different from each other. Keith was a little more polished, I think. I would probably go with Keith.
No, I'm sorry. Doug versus, Keith. Right.
Yeah, Keith is here.
So you're
doing White Runner versus,
They got sitting at the table.
you're sitting at the table, Keith versus Doug. Doug was the first guy.
yeah, I appreciated Doug's kind of just straight up passion and everything. But I personally would probably go with Keith. More calculated. I feel like Doug would, I don't know, I would go with Keith. I think that is much.
Yeah. Nubia, Josh, and Brian.
I would say the two together.
It's not that much overwire to be close. That's what makes me feel better, because I would be like, yeah, with them, but I think they would work closely together.
No, I just, in terms of who you want to sit there, I'd like to have a woman represent. I think that'd be a good thing to do, personally. And I thought she was sharp, and once she got her grounding and felt comfortable, she was very articulate.
She was like a Keith. She was to the point, pretty tight. I thought.
And then Josh on the BB&K side, I thought he was like very measured and very sharp and had it down. And then Ryan, I thought his responses were not, practiced in any way. I thought
He was like the color commentator.
I guess
I have to totally answer the question, very on.
Yeah.
And he was like the color. A little more detail,
That's right.
I would like to keep better than, I mean, just, I don't want to say like them, because I don't know that, but I was more comfortable listening to Keith than that.
Okay, so, I guess the majority is pointing toward Jones Meyer. Shane, you're the man.
I'm the lawyer. Yep.
So, are you gonna be able to live with it if we build it?
Like I said, I think, they'd all do fine. We'll see what happens. I guess, is there any reference checking or anything you want to do before we just go ahead and make a decision? It sounds like you've already done some of that.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't do some reference.
I mean, yeah, we can do some, Melanie, I can do some weather checking from the proposal.
Are we in a huge hurry to make this home today? It's just best, well, you're, you know.
No, I get it.
So, can we do this, like, tentative selection pending reference checks?
Since you don't mind it, sounds like stuff, right?
Yeah, so, I mean.
It is like two things for us to get focused on land use stuff.
Right, but what I mean is, like, you get a sense of people, like, just instantly, even if it's just three good people, you know what I mean? Like, good person, got me what I wanted, got quick, in BS. Like, if you tell me that, then that means on the big thing, we're probably gonna do the same, right? It's almost better how someone performs on the small, seemingly non-substantive things, because if they get that out of the park, they usually get the big things out of the park too. So I would say, as we continue this, Jones Meyer, Wiper, EDK.
Right. Well, let's,
I mean, I don't know.
You want to take a vote on
We
that?
need a motion.
So we can do a couple things. We can do by consensus, you know, you're asking staff to do some reference checks, and then we would vote on it in July. Or we can vote on it today, tentative, as you said, based on reference checks, but it would require a vote of the board.
I'll make a motion for Jones Meyer pending reference checks by staff.
I'll second.
In second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's what I even know, man. We're shooting it.
All right, with that.
Real quick, before moving on to item C, one more point of discussion just on this topic. Because obviously once, well, the selection's been made, so the next step is to negotiate contract, and I'm assuming that will be with the committee level, instead of the board level. And then, another step, Gary's going to be sending me a memo with basically all of their outstanding work, and so I thought maybe the committee would want to go through it and kind of decide, do we want them to continue with A, B, and C, or just B and D, or whatever. So we need to do that. I want that also.
Transition. I think we should get, Keith involved in that discussion.
Okay.
So, I guess the decision to terminate all or part of, Gary's work.
See if we have that audit.
Well, we can go back to be part of the transition process, right? Like you're identifying. Maybe it's like negotiate a scope with them to. I'm okay with like a month overlap, like you were talking about, because you can do a lot in that 30 days to help with that transition, dictate what stays with. I mean, I can negotiate that risk analysis and everything you're and say, no, let's keep them for this, let's keep them for that.
I think,
The rest of it will just.
yeah, that's where I'm at. Any, like, if you guys get into it, I have complete faith. You guys' final decision, but that's exactly where I'm at. The more we can bring to the new team, or if it's just not necessary, that's where I'm at. Like, yeah.
They may also talk with Gary about Alpine County and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to jettison your council.
I'd like to know that too.
I wondered as well, you know. So, that's why I don't think we should make those decisions without talking to our new council.
Okay, so step one, get a contract approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get Adrian waiting for us.
All right.
Get off like that question.
I don't know if you saw the email that I sent out. Yeah. I'll wait till it.
Just the rate,
Yeah.
This is still on. Picture of water there too.
So this would have been, what, 2 weeks ago today. I guess it was my first official day as interim general manager. Adrian comes in at the end of the day. It said, the county just informed us that they're repaving Pioneer Trail and South Upper Truckee, and we have to lower and raise all of our iron in the streets. We don't have a contract to do that. We don't have any funding to do it. And the county has said, if we hold up this process, it's going to be our fault. We're going to be blamed by the community for doing it. Exactly. Like, okay.
All the county can do right? Nothing. Like there's that's not over there. Sorry.
Well, yeah, like my first thought was, what if the tables were turned and we were asking the county to do this? What was the response we get from them? So anyway, things have changed since that initial discussion.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll just go ahead and let you talk about the project and what it entails.
So the county, I mean, based on all the potholes that we've had from the extreme winter, the county is repaving Pioneer Trail and South Upper Truckee. Their plan was to repave basically the entire area within the right of way. So we're talking Highway 50 at Pioneer Trail to pretty much Black Bart, and almost all of South Upper Truckee. They paved a little bit of the part off of the highway already, and they were going to be doing the rest of it. So as a part of that, they're basically coming in and milling 3 inches of the existing asphalt out. And so we've got to go and pull all of our water valve boxes. You typically put a steel plate over the riser pipe. You do the same thing with the manhole lids and covers. Well, they didn't include that in their bid for our area. We had the same thing happen last year over at Cold Creek, and we talked to them about it. And they were supposed to put that in their bid moving forward. Well, they didn't. They did have another area also on this paving contract that was in the Placerville area with El Dorado Irrigation District, and they did have the price for lowering and raising iron in that area, and they have a reimbursement agreement with EID to pay for that work. So we've talked to them since then to make sure all of the people know that it needs to be included in future contracts so that we don't get into the same predicament where basically after the bid happens, we're needing to talk to that contractor doing the paving and getting them to lower and raise our valve boxes and our panels. So since then,
Can I ask you a quick question?
absolutely.
Are we the only ones with iron in the right of way, or is there other utilities?
We are the main utility with iron in the right of way. Communications might have a little bit, the gas company might have a little bit, but nothing compared to what we've got. We've got about 35 valves on Pioneer Trail and on South Upper Truckee, so 70-ish total, and a similar, I think even more manholes than valve boxes. So we are the major utility that needs to lower raise iron for paving projects in Tahoe. So Granite is the contractor that won the paving contract. It's been kind of hard to nail down what the paving limits are, because after reaching out to the county, it was going to be less than all of Pioneer Trail and South Upper Truckee. So just last week, I mean, they're currently marking out the paving limits because they don't have enough money to pay for the entire stretches. So we'll only have to lower and raise at this point whatever's in the area that Granite's going to be milling out, that they're marking out as we go. So we basically talked about would we sole source with the contractor with Granite Construction directly, which is similar to what we did last year. Or can we were really pushing the county to put it on their contract, then do a change order with Granite, and then we would do a reimbursement agreement.
Is that for better pricing?
So it was bid on that, so that was a competitive bid where they got the pricing for the other side of the hill. Whereas if we sole source directly with Granite, there's no bid, it's just whatever their price is.
That's what I mean, like, but doing the change order through the county, would that be different? Because the county didn't put it in their bid package either.
They didn't put it in their bid package, but because they had another location where they have the same work going on, then there's already a price there. Now, when I talked to Granite, they wouldn't honor that price for our area because they're gonna have their people staying up here in hotels, so they basically said it would be that number plus subsistence. Which, after talking with the county, that's the direction we're looking to go right now, is that, well, there's another piece to this, but right now we're looking at basically the county doing the work under their contract, and then us entering into a reimbursement agreement with them after the fact so that we can pay them back. Now, one caveat to all this is they have two contractors coming in. So Granite's doing the major work where they mill out 3 inches of asphalt and repave, but they're also doing a surface treatment, which includes like a microplaning of the asphalt from 1/4 inch to 1 inch. And because of when they're getting started this year, they're not going to get to that work until next year. And what they've told us is that basically, if we raise the iron now, we're going to have to lower it again for the next contractor. So what we are reluctantly looking at doing is basically lowering the iron for Granite, leading that through the winter, which means, we won't have access to those manholes or valve boxes without jackhammering out the new asphalt. And then after their contractor comes to do the surface treatment, that contractor would then raise all of the iron back.
So you don't raise it twice. Right?
So we don't raise it twice, basically double the cost that the district would incur.
Except for certain manholes or water boxes, we would want to actually have raised.
We're going to look at which ones that are, the critical ones, and then raise those up this year. And our crews are going to do that. We're going to limit the amount of those that we have to do. We're going to try to anticipate which ones we might need to access in the winter, because digging those up in the winter, trying to find a buried valve in the snowstorm.
Yeah. Okay. And so when we put the agenda together, we wanted to make sure in here that we were seeking approval to increase the spending authorization amount to cover what it would cost to lower all this infrastructure under the emergency. So we did not have to bid it. But like Adrian said, we don't have to do that now because we'll perform it under the reimbursement agreement, which will come forward at a later date.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So all we're going to do today, since it is on the agenda, we'll go ahead and ask for you to approve extending the emergency, just continuing it.
For what purpose? We have a motion?
Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question first? So, it all makes sense what you just said, although somewhat frustrating from a timeline perspective for the county.
And that we have a big pipe project that is.
Yeah, I know. That was the second part about that one.
Very much,
Well, no, I mean, like as a community, it makes us look ridiculous and stupid. As a district, it makes us look ridiculous.
Well, I don't know if it does, because the magnitude of potholes and everything there is actually insane.
No, I agree with that, but if you
They'd be okay with you paving it.
But if you pay for it, I'm telling you, as I existed in this world long before I was a district board member, when I saw a road paved and I saw people sawing through it again, I said these people need to pull their heads out of their asses. Quote me on that if anyone hears it, because you need to pull your head out of your ass if you run things up this way. It's bad for cost. It's bad for just the optics of it. It diminishes a road you just paved. It's poor planning. I think it's just poor planning. But my concern with the county is, they didn't include this, the lower and raising as a budgetary consideration before. We discussed it with them. They didn't include it again, although they included other projects. So is the problem resolved? Or is this like, is it, what's going on with the county? Is there something that Paul or somebody else has an interest with it.
I'm actually gonna contact the public works director. I've already got a call into Rafael Martinez of El Dorado County, just my liaison role with the county. I think I can offer some things. I also, want to talk to the local DOT folks, just to make sure, because I work with them quite a bit anyway. So I'm gonna try to help with that a little bit, to kind of get the message sent a little bit different level. And so hopefully that will do it, but I think we need to be vigilant about it, right? Because the difference with this contract is, from their eyes, this is an emergency contract, right? And so we can do all the best planning we want, but if we have a winter like we just had and the road gets tore up like it is, you gotta go in and fix it, unfortunately, regardless of your best laid plans. And so we're in a tough spot, and we're gonna have to manage it, and we're gonna have to work with the county to message it about our projects going in next and what we're doing to, make it the best for the community. But we're just in the situation we're in, and I'm extremely disappointed that, the iron, was not included in the bid after multiple times of telling them. That's just unacceptable in my eyes, and we're gonna get to the bottom of it.
And to shed some light on that, we've been asking those same questions, and I believe there's just a little bit of a disconnect with the Placerville side and South Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
We're now talking to the Placerville folks and the person
Yeah.
that administers those contracts.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm gonna talk to Rafael, because it's a DOT-wide thing that needs to be pushed down.
And they are definitely aware of our Pioneer Trail Waterline project. In fact, they were gonna pay, I think they were talking about doing Pioneer Trail last year, and they were pushing it off. And what I'm hoping is that the majority of the area where they're milling out the 3 inches won't be the area that we will be in the road. We're gonna be in the shoulder for as much of that Pioneer Trail Waterline as we can. The main area where we'll be in the pavement is, basically from Sierra House Middle School to Colbert.
And when is that one supposed to start again?
It depends on if we get federal money. It might be next year if we can get that year money.
Because we were also interested if the county was gonna look for a FEMA, reimbursement for this, and it looks like they are not.
So if I could just get the timeline right, let's just assume we get the money from the feds. Based on the construction time, clearly they're not starting early in the year, we're already towards the end of June.
Yeah.
So they're gonna finish a portion of it before, the winter sets in this year, and then they're gonna finalize next year. Whereas if we got the federal funding, we could be doing the pipeline May next year.
If we get the funding, that would be the plan, May next year. And they would have to,
Again, you don't have, this isn't planning a trip to Mars, I'll just leave it alone.
Well, it just seems so short-sighted that, what resurfacing happens without having to deal with animal covers and everything else? And why wouldn't you coordinate with utilities? This is really crazy. I don't know. Really wild. How that could be totally medicinally.
I think in the past, in our area, I think our crews used to do some of the storing and raising of animals, and they haven't done major road work like this. I had the idea when I talked to Granite, was getting an idea of how much this was going to cost if we could do it ourselves, and talking to Granite for the amount of iron that was out there, it was going to be 2 weeks of work for an 11-man crew. And I was like, that's our water crew, doing nothing but this, and that was just to lower the iron, not to bring it back up.
No, but I appreciate your efforts in reaching out to them and try to approach it a couple different levels with Adrian and you, and kind of going that way. It makes a lot of sense to me.
And Julie's been talking to Brian Mullins over there as well.
Deep down the west look.
And I haven't been following my federal legislative calendar. So when is the decision, when is kind of the final moment when we'll know about Pioneer Trail at the federal level?
Those earmarks should be, congressional designee spending, should be probably in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 months.
We'll know.
We should hear.
I asked Shelley because I wasn't sure either, and she was telling me that she thought it was going to be January when they passed the federal budget.
Well, there's 2 different things. There's the appropriations approval, which goes before that, and then the budget gets approved, so it could be sooner than that we would know. That's when you get the money, would probably be in January.
Announcement at the August event probably, maybe? No.
Got it. Maybe. Right, cool. So
All
now,
right, so requested board action pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 22050C, continuing the emergency action to respond to winter storms emergency pursuant to resolution number 3242-23.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
moved and seconded, any discussion? All those in favor?
All right, we'll check those references.
Okay, that concludes our meeting.
Work session, meeting, first of all.